Book 7, Immortal Ancient builds a bridge leaving the ninth mountain. Chapter 1005, Hope regarding the ancient realm. As the killing intent of virtually the entire planet began to envelop Jade, an ancient voice calmly spoke out from the ninth mountain, echoing out to fill the entire ninth mountain and sea. "Elder Brother Fang," said the voice, seemingly filling the entire starry sky of the ninth mountain and sea. Planets trembled, and innumerable ripples shrank down into the form of an eye. Within that eye, an old man sat cross-legged. He had white hair and looked very ancient, and as he spoke, he lifted his right hand and pointed toward planet East Victory. As he pointed, boundless ripples spread out through the starry sky, covering planet East Victory as if to prevent the first-generation patriarch from attacking. Up to now, the first-generation patriarch hadn't spoken a single word. Now, his hoarse voice echoed out, speaking a single sentence that caused the ripples in the starry sky to suddenly stop in place. "I demand rectification." At the same time, Jai Ziyufeng screamed miserably. The sound echoed out as her head was separated from her body. Her body was then crushed into nothing but fragments, as if by a gigantic hand. She was annihilated, destroyed in both spirit and body. Even an almighty Tao realm expert couldn't stand up to a single blow from the killing intent of the first-generation patriarch. In the moment that Jai Ziyufeng died, a boom could be heard as the killing intent slammed violently into the ceiling shield surrounding planet East Victory. Cracking sounds could be heard as the spell, being maintained by the combined forces of three of the Jai clan's Tao realm experts, collapsed into pieces. It shattered into countless tiny pieces that were swept up by a massive wind, which then blew them away from planet East Victory. Innumerable fissures then opened up in the void, spreading out in a way that resembled a spider web. The three Tao realm experts were scared witless, and their minds filled with roaring. Their faces fell as they did everything they could think of to escape, even to the point of unleashing essence power. However, the killing intent from planet East Victory was as intense as ever, enough to shake all of the ninth mountain and sea. "Patriarch, save us." The three Tao realm experts were so scared they felt as if their scalps were about to explode. An intense sensation of deadly crisis filled them, a feeling of fear that they had not experienced for a long, long time. It was as if the killing intent from planet East Victory wanted to wipe them clean away from the ninth mountain and sea. Any one of these people could set foot onto any planet in the ninth mountain and sea and make it tremble. A mere glance from them could send a sect rising to the top, or could destroy it. But now, they were so terrified that their hearts were trembling. They knew that the killing intent of the Fang clan's first-generation patriarch could prevent them from entering reincarnation. They would never be reborn and would truly be erased from the world. They could only watch as the killing intent bore down on them, three Tao realm patriarchs of the Jai clan. It was at this point that more ripples spread out through the starry sky, as if some power were forcefully interposing itself between the killing intent and the three old men. The ripples formed together into a huge, illusory eye. The eye appeared to be ancient, and as soon as it appeared, it stared fixedly at the killing intent. "Elder Brother Fang, enough, you're not a match for me." The killing intent came to a stop in front of the eye. Scintillating light spread out as it formed into the shape of a person. It was the first-generation patriarch, who hovered there, formed from countless motes of shining light that made his visage somewhat blurry. At the same time, the old man sitting cross-legged within the eye looked over calmly at the first-generation patriarch. "I might not be able to seal the heavens, but I can shatter the heavens of the ninth mountain and sea," the first-generation patriarch said coolly. As his voice echoed out, Meng Hao was standing down on planet East Victory. Even with the level of his cultivation base, he was able to see what was happening. He looked up into the sky and saw the killing intent of the first-generation patriarch. He watched him slaughter a Tao realm expert, and then cause the other three Tao realm cultivators to flee for their lives. All of this caused Meng Hao's eyes to gleam with a strange light. "One of these days, I'm going to be just as powerful as him," he thought, panting. When he heard the first-generation patriarch's words, an even stranger expression rose up on his face. "How come it seems like these two guys are playing chess? One of them knows he can't outplay the other, but he still gives the impression that if he gets pissed off enough, he could just flip over the game board." Meng Hao cleared his throat. For some reason, he suddenly realized that he quite liked the style of the first-generation patriarch. Up in the starry sky, the old man in the giant eye didn't respond to the Fang clan's first-generation patriarch. The Jai clan is not permitted to step half a pace into the starry sky surrounding planet East Victory. the first-generation patriarch said slowly. The old man in the giant eye looked deeply at the first-generation patriarch, then slowly nodded. Finally, the eye flew backward, enveloped the three Dao realm experts, and then vanished. The matter of Jai Ziyufeng and the three quasi-Dao old men wasn't brought up. Apparently, the Jai clan was willing to give them up as the price to pay to the Fang clan to end the situation. When the giant eye faded away, the image of the first-generation patriarch also disappeared. No figure was visible, and the killing intent vanished. Everything went back to normal. However, the Ninth Mountain and Sea was only beginning to be shaken. All of the sects and clans of the Ninth Mountain and Sea witnessed the rise of the Fang clan that day. They personally watched as the Fang clan of former glory, which had remained quiet and silent for so many years, once again became one of the most domineering forces in the entire Ninth Mountain and Sea. Even the Jai clan had to pay the price, which caused all cultivators to gasp. Now, they looked toward the Fang clan with expressions of shock and fear. The Fang clan had remained quiet for a long time, leading many people in the Ninth Mountain and Sea to believe that their strength was just for show. Now, such notions were shattered. The Fang clan made it very clear to everyone that they were just as domineering as they always had been. The reappearance of the first-generation patriarch, despite him being a clone, or more accurately, the soul of Planet East Victory, caused everyone who witnessed the event to be thoroughly shaken. Furthermore, it became known that, in addition to the first-generation patriarch, the Fang clan had two Dao realm experts. In the end, though, it was the first-generation patriarch himself that was the most shocking deterrent. Considering the Jai clan was incapable of exterminating the Fang clan, how could any of the other sects and clans possibly be qualified to be on an equal footing with them? The Ninth Mountain and Sea was completely and utterly shaken. The Dao realm patriarchs of the various sects and clans mused on the matter silently. It was now with great caution and fear that they looked toward Planet East Victory and the Fang clan. The first-generation patriarch had slaughtered Dao realm experts, instilling such fear that they could only gasp in response. Considering the Fang clan is like this, they fully deserve to be called the despots of the Ninth Mountain and Sea. When the Fang clan revealed all their trump cards in that battle and allowed everyone to see, you would think that would remove some of their air of mystery. And yet, that final trump card is simply too astonishing. After much thought, the Dao realm experts sighed and returned to their various organizations. It was in this manner that the upheavals of the Fang clan ended. The Fang clan was the clear winner. The fangs bared by the Jai clan were shorn clean, and they were forced to pay the price of one Dao realm expert and three quasi-Dao cultivators. At the same time, the problem of the traitors within the Fang clan was handled perfectly. After the baptism of blood, the Fang clan was more stable than ever. In addition to the presence of the first-generation patriarch, the Fang clan also had a worthy successor. First was Meng Hao, who was already stunning beyond compare, a person the Ninth Mountain and Sea would never forget. Joining Meng Hao was Fang Wei. The fact that Fang Wei was focused on defending the clan to the death was something that many people had noted. Meng Hao and Fang Wei were now objects of admiration and envy on the part of the other sects and clans. First, they have Meng Hao, who stifled all of the members of his generation. His path will definitely stretch far and wide. And then there's Fang Wei. He might be a bit weaker than Meng Hao, but he's strong enough to defend the clan. One will wage battle outside the clan, the other will remain inside to defend it. With the two of them, the Fang clan will only achieve greater heights of glory. No wonder the Jai clan attacked the Fang clan. It won't be too long before the Fang clan might be strong enough to contend with Lord Jai for control of the heavens again. After all, they're the Fang clan, you know. They used to be just like the Jai clan, a powerful clan of warriors. The Jai clan has their karma, and the Fang clan has their reincarnation. Two warrior clans who caused a rain of blood to fall upon the Ninth Mountain and Sea back in the day. The war of the Fang clan ended. However, it didn't take long before the various sects and clans of the Ninth Mountain and Sea sprang into action. Various patriarchs prepared to personally take their chosen to Planet East Victory to offer congratulatory gifts due to the appearance of the first-generation patriarch. After the Jai clan left, Planet East Victory returned to normal. The only thing that remained of the traitorous clan members was their blood that stained the ground and the reek of gore that filled the air. The resurrected clan members were filled with complex feelings. Under the direction of the Grand Elder, the recovery work began. Fang Wei stood there silently. After looking around, bitterness rose up in his heart and he bowed his head. The first-generation patriarch did not stay. The whole clan bowed deeply in respect as he re-entered the rift to the ancestral land. In the moment before he disappeared, he turned and looked at Meng Hao for a moment. In that moment, a tremor ran through Meng Hao, and the first-generation patriarch's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. You have signs of the legacy of Lord Li on you. The legacy of Lord Li is connected to East Victory. At the same time, it is no longer on planet East Victory. It has already been acquired by a cultivator from this planet. As for the Jai clan sowing chaos here in the Fang clan, that also had to do with the legacy. Actually, the legacy was used simply to draw out the Jai clan, a strategy, that's all. However, when the time comes to activate it, if it is connected to you by destiny, then you should be able to do so. One thought: stellar transformation. Without a bloodline clone, it's impossible to cultivate it to the final degree. Nirvana fruits, use them well. The members of the Fang clan have 4 lives. If you combine them together at the right time, then you can open the door to the ancient realm. You and I are connected by destiny, drawn together by blood. The ancient realm begins with Tao fruit, but if you begin with Nirvana fruit, then you can accomplish something completely unheard of and shake the entire 9 mountains and seas. The ancient voice echoed in Meng Hao's ears before fading away. Meng Hao trembled as he watched the first-generation patriarch step into the rift and then vanish. After hearing the patriarch's words, Meng Hao's eyes began to shine. Gradually, he came to a new understanding. Before, he had been confused as to the role played by the Nirvana fruits in the whole matter. How effective would they have been if Fang Hessian had been able to resist the urge to spring into action? If that had happened, wouldn't it mean that the entire series of events simply wouldn't have occurred? Meng Hao now understood that the core element of the plan hadn't been his Nirvana fruits, but rather the revelation regarding the legacy of Lord Li. That was why the Jai clan had made their move. One thought: stellar transformation, a Taoist magic that, when cultivated to the ultimate degree, can be used to incarnate into a planet. The starstone in his left eye glittered, causing his heart to pound even faster. According to what the first-generation patriarch had said, the ancient realm was not too far away for him. I have 2 Nirvana fruits from the first-generation patriarch, and 2 of my own. Nirvana fruits can allow members of the Fang clan bloodline to live 4 lives. 4 Nirvana fruits, when I can absorb all of them with no time limit. That is when I will step into the ancient realm. Meng Hao's eyes shone with a bright light. The sight of the first-generation patriarch slaughtering members of the Tao realm once again flashed in his mind. Chapter 1006, The Sword and the Shield of This Generation. Meng Hao took a deep breath, and his eyes shone with a brilliant light. After a moment, he sent some divine will into the terracotta soldier. The terracotta soldier could not stay outside of the ancestral land for a long time. After receiving Meng Hao's instructions via divine will, it faced him, then clasped hands and bowed. Meng Hao didn't feel like parting with it, and yet could only watch as it entered the rift and turned into a statue once again. One day I'll do the same thing as the first-generation patriarch. I'll use a piece of the ruins of immortality to take you away. That way you can accompany me as I wage war among the heavens. Meng Hao made this promise to the terracotta soldier deep in his heart. It was a promise, a guarantee, much the same as the one he had made to Han Shan that year in the realm of the bridge ruins. He would never forget such promises. After the terracotta soldier entered the ancestral land, the rift closed and then vanished. The sky above the Fang clan returned to its normal state. However, the land itself seemed wasted. Signs of withering could be seen on countless plants and trees, and the spiritual energy of the entire planet had apparently been reduced. Although the upheavals in the clan had not resulted in any overt losses, in reality, the entire planet had been weakened, not to mention the loss of all the traitorous clan members. Meng Hao stood there thoughtfully for a moment before coming to the conclusion that the weakening of planet East Victory must have something to do with the first-generation patriarch's awakening. An intensely powerful entity like that, a person willing to flip the game board over rather than continue playing, who could strike fear into the heart of Lord Jai himself, could obviously not be awakened easily. By now it was evening, and off in the distance, the sun was scattering its twilight rays over the land. The resurrected clan members were lost in reminiscence, thinking about the many people who had once existed around them. No wild joy broke out because of the resolution of the chaos in the clan. In contrast, heavy sighs existed in the hearts of all the clan members. The ordinary clan members felt this way, and Fang Wei even more so. It was the same with Fang Xiaodao, Fang Yangsu, and Fang Danyun, who hovered silently in midair. "It's over," Fang Xiaodao said softly, looking out over the entire Fang clan. His voice was deep and archaic, and as it echoed out, all of the clan members looked up into the sky. Mortal bodies can sometimes contract vile ailments. If sicknesses like that are not expunged, they can lead to death. Clans can also be infected with ailments. Yesterday, a foul disease lurked deep within the Fang clan. If it were to explode out, it would definitely affect the entire clan. Today, that ailment was rooted out. Although our Fang clan is now grieving and in pain, at least we now have a new lease on life. Tomorrow will be a new day for us. We will cause all cultivators of the Ninth Mountain and see to recall the glory of the Fang clan. I will no longer remain in secluded meditation. From now on, I will assume the office of clan chief. I will lead the Fang clan to unparalleled heights of glory. As Fang Xiaodao's words echoed out, it caused flames to ignite in the eyes of all of the members of the Fang clan down below. It was as if his voice carried some mysterious power that entered the clan members' hearts and caused them to burn with determination. Fang Wei stood there silently, completely alone, with no clan members even willing to approach him. He had no friends left. His father, his grandfather, and all of the other members of his bloodline were all dead. He was the only one who had been resurrected. Fang Yangsu hovered in midair, looking at Fang Wei immersed in his bitterness, and sighed inwardly. He waved his finger down toward Fang Wei, causing him to shudder, and then suddenly lurch up into the air. All members of the clan watched as he flew over toward Fang Yangsu. As Meng Hao watched what was happening, he suddenly realized that Fang Wei's corpse had long since vanished from within his bag of holding. "Are you still willing to defend the Fang clan?" Fang Yangsu asked calmly. Fang Wei began to tremble. After a long moment of silence, he looked down at the other members of the Fang clan and at Meng Hao. Finally, he turned back to Fang Yangsu, clasped hands, and bowed deeply. "To defend the Fang clan has been my primary aspiration in life." By this point, all of the members of the Fang clan were staring silently at Fang Wei. All of them remembered the tragic scene in which he had died. Those images were engraved deeply on their hearts. Fang Yangsu looked at Fang Wei for a long moment, and it almost seemed as if he were looking into the young man's heart. After a long moment, a slight smile appeared on his face. "Henceforth you will follow me. In the future, you must live up to your name and protect the clan. You will not be the sword of the clan, instead you will become its shield." Fang Wei was shaking, and tears streamed down his face as he clasped hands and bowed toward Fang Yangsu. Fang Yangsu sighed, then turned and bowed to Fang Xiaodao. Then he waved his hand and departed with Fang Wei, the two of them turning into beams of colorful light that shot away from the Fang clan in the direction of the medicine immortal sect. Fang Danyun and Fang Xiaodao watched them leave and sighed inwardly. Fang Yangsu was the current generation's shield, and also its shadow. Fang Xiaodao was the clan's sword, as well as its glory, boundless and supreme. In every generation of the clan, there would be a blazing sun who shone with boundless light, and behind that person, there would be a shadow. That shadow was there to assist the blazing sun, to help that person accomplish many things they themselves could not, to endure more than was possible, to deal with things that could not be touched by the other. Such persons were not shining swords that garnered mass attention. Instead, they became shields that others would eventually overlook. A person like that had to be willing to remain silent and unobtrusive. They had to shrink from the light, give up all their status and position, abandon all glory. They were a shadow and the shield of the clan. In this generation, Fang Yangsu picked Fang Wei as his future successor. It was a path that ordinary clan members might not understand. However, Meng Hao understood everything, and it caused him to tremble. His expression was a complex one as he stared at Fang Wei, recalling what he looked like as a child, and the resolute words he had spoken in his tender, young voice. "My name is Fang Wei. I want to become a powerful expert because I'm going to defend my clan for my whole life." The seventh patriarch, the fifth patriarch, and the third patriarch, the ancient realm experts also watched Fang Yangsu and Fang Wei leaving, their expressions gradually flickering with understanding. This was the Fang clan, a place where clan rules ensured the continued glory of the clan. In each generation there were two important people, one who existed in the light, the other in darkness. One was the sword, the other was the shield. One basked in glory, the other was like a shadow. Meng Hao now also understood why. Although the first generation patriarch had passed away into meditation, his clone had transformed into a planet to defend the clan. It was because the first-generation patriarch's true self had been the clan's sword, whereas his clone was the shield. Even though his true self ended up dying, his clone could continue to defend the clan throughout all eternity. The Fang clan, he murmured. Gradually, he was beginning to approve of the clan much more than he had before. Fang Danian bowed to Fang Xiaodao, then looked down at Meng Hao with a smile. It was a smile of encouragement, praise, and even more, anticipation that he could accomplish something momentous that was far different than what Fang Wei had done. Smiling, he turned and left, heading back to his home in the Tao of Alchemy Division. His longevity was reaching its end, and even given the fact that he could split with his unicorn immortals, it would be hard for him to hold on for much longer. Yet, he was without any regrets. He hoped to use the rest of his life to once again lead the clan's Tao of Alchemy Division into glory. Much about the medicine immortal sect, the shield of the clan, were merely stories that had been purposefully created by the Fang clan. However, one thing was true. Of the clan's 3 holy medicinal pills, the medicine immortal sect really could concoct 2, something that the Tao of Alchemy Division was incapable of. The clan members down on the ground below now burned with determination to see the clan rise to prominence. They began to reconstruct the many areas of the ancestral mansion that were in ruins and wash away the blood that soaked the ground. It wouldn't take long to restore them. Perhaps by the following morning, the Fang clan would not look very different than it had before, at least not to any outsider. Fang Xiaodao watched Fang Yangsu and Fang Danian leave, then began to leave himself. The 7th patriarch and the others all joined him. Meng Hao blinked, then cleared his throat. The sound wasn't very loud, but it was enough to echo out in the air and be heard by Fang Xiaodao and the others. However, Fang Xiaodao pretended that he didn't hear it and continued off into the distance. Meng Hao was now starting to get the sense that something fishy was going on. Although the Jai clan had come because of the legacy of Lord Li, and would likely still have caused a disturbance even if things had not played out the way they had regarding Meng Hao. In Meng Hao's opinion, he had been part of the plan all along, and although he didn't mind being used by the clan, what he did mind was being used and not getting anything out of it. Hey, they should give me some money, he thought. I sacrificed a lot to help out. I was scared to death on multiple occasions and suffered serious mental trauma. At the very least, they have to give me some sort of explanation, right? Feeling very wronged, he stared at Fang Xiaodao and the others receding into the distance, and then called out in a loud voice, "Patriarchs, hold on a moment." As soon as the words left his mouth, Fang Xiaodao and the others' faces flickered. However, they waved their sleeves and their bodies began to fade as they teleported away. Meng Hao was now getting very anxious. "Patriarchs, wait, don't run away. Hey, you old fogies, stop right there." Fang Xiaodao and the others were about half faded away when Meng Hao suddenly burst out in anger. When the other clan members in the ancestral mansion heard his words, their hearts began to pound. Fang Xiaodao suddenly stopped in place, and his vanishing form rapidly grew clear. Realizing that he had no way to get out of the situation, he turned and glared sternly at Meng Hao. "You little hoodlum, I'm your grandfather's grandfather. Do you really dare to call me an old fogey?" Thinking about how irritated he was, Meng Hao braced himself and retorted loudly, "Why wouldn't I dare? I didn't do anything wrong. I performed some heroic services for the clan just now." Fang Xiaodao stared at him wide-eyed, then suddenly swished his sleeve. In a flash, Meng Hao vanished from his position in midair to reappear inside of a building. He glanced around cautiously, then backed up a few paces. Fang Xiaodao laughed in spite of himself as he sat there off to the side, looking expectantly at Meng Hao. "You feel wronged, huh?" he said. "Go ahead and explain yourself." "During the clan upheavals, I spilled blood for the clan," replied Meng Hao instantly. As soon as the words left his mouth, Fang Xiaodao waved his hand, causing a softly glowing light to wash over Meng Hao. Instantly, all of his wounds were healed. Actually, his wounds had already recovered by more than half, but now they were completely recovered, and even the pores of his entire body had opened up. In fact, his cultivation base was now even more stable than before. "There you go, all healed up," Fang Xiaodao said with a slight smile. As he looked at Meng Hao with that smile, he looked like nothing more than a wily old fox. "During the battle, I ate a ton of medicinal pills," Meng Hao continued carefully. "I even had to absorb quite a bit of immortal jade and spirit stones." After he finished speaking, Fang Xiaodao waved his hand again. This time, no softly glowing light appeared, but instead, a bright screen. Visible on the screen was a detailed accounting of everything that had happened from the moment Meng Hao had transcended his tribulation to the end of the battle. During that time, he had not consumed any medicinal pills, nor had he absorbed any immortal jade, let alone spirit stones. Meng Hao's heart trembled, but his expression was unprecedentedly solemn as he looked at fox-like Fang Xiaodou. All of a sudden, he realized that he was up against a formidable opponent. Chapter 1007, The Old Fox versus the Fox Cub. When I was fighting those chosen, I was fighting for the glory of the clan. I made the Fang clan the center of attention of the whole Ninth Mountain and Sea, Meng Hao said, staring Fang Xiaodou in the eye. He had finally realized that the old man's aura was actually very similar to his own. Oh, that's a good point. Very well. Henceforth, you are the #1 chosen of the Fang clan. Both to those inside the clan and toward outsiders, you now represent the clan itself. Fang Xiaodou waved his hand, causing a golden medallion to fly out in a beam of light and then hover in front of Meng Hao. It was inscribed with the character Fang Chinese letter on one side, and on the other side the word chosen Chinese letter Chinese letter. Meng Hao stared at the medallion in shock, then glared back at Fang Xiaodou. He suddenly had the feeling that he was being toyed with, a serious provocation in the area which he cared most about. My heart grows cold with disappointment to be manipulated by the clan like this, Meng Hao said, gnashing his teeth. Fang Xiaodou waved his finger at Meng Hao, causing a warm feeling to spread across his chest and over his heart. Feel a bit warmer now, he said coolly. Meng Hao was about to flip his lid. He had never, ever met someone as shameless as this old fogey. He had already explained himself quite thoroughly, and yet had been sidestepped 3 times in a row. During the clan upheavals, I single-handedly stopped the possessed Fang Wei, he cried. I saved a bunch of fellow clan members. I even managed to kill Fang Ziyoshan. I was the one who summoned the Dao guardsmen to fight against the 3 quasi-Dao experts. I helped make sure that your plan succeeded. I also killed Fang Heshan. In fact, the spark that lit the whole fuse was my nirvana fruits. I've done a lot for the clan, and I demand a reward. Very well, you want cultivation resources, right? Fang Xiaodou said with a sigh. It seems that about half of your personality is exactly the same as your grandfather. Feeling a bit guilty, he cleared his throat. He waved his right hand, causing Meng Hao's eyes to gleam with anticipation. Immediately, a strip of paper appeared in front of Fang Xiaodou. A few swishing sounds could be heard as Fang Xiaodou then wrote his name down on the piece of paper. I know you're fond of getting promissory notes, Fang Xiaodou said with a smile, so I've prepared one for you. However much you think the clan owes you, go ahead and write it down yourself. Meng Hao gaped at the piece of paper. When he looked up, his eyes were bloodshot. He was about to continue fighting back when Fang Xiaodou's expression suddenly turned serious. He took a deep breath and stared gravely at Meng Hao. Meng Hao, who had just been on the verge of losing his temper, suddenly couldn't help but rein it in. Fang Hao, Fang Xiaodou said, his voice sounding deep and extremely dignified. I know of everything you've done for the clan, and I understand that you feel wronged, he continued, his voice now soft and archaic. I'm even more aware of all the meritorious service you've provided. There's no need to even mention anything else. The simple achievement of opening your immortal meridians to the pinnacle has shaken the entire Ninth Mountain and Sea. Anyone who did that in any sect or clan would definitely be gifted with a precious treasure. It's the same here. You are just as important to our clan as someone of the Dao realm. Fang Wei will be the shield of the clan, and you will be the sword. Henceforth he will be the shadow, your shadow. While you bask in glory, he will remain obscure and unknown. That is because you are the true future hope of the clan. Do you really think that the clan is being stingy, withholding a reward from you? You're wrong. Let me tell you, the clan would never treat a blazing sun like you with the slightest bit of stinginess. However, are you aware of the price that had to be paid to awaken the first-generation patriarch? The first-generation patriarch passed away in meditation long ago. What you saw earlier was only his clone, or perhaps you could say, the spirit of planet East Victory. Normally speaking, he remains in slumber. Awakening him causes planet East Victory to be withered up for 1,000 years. In order to ensure that planet East Victory will continue to rotate normally for the next 1,000 years, the clan has to pay an indescribable amount of resources. Right now the clan really has no reward to give you. Furthermore, there is no reward valuable enough to represent how important you are to the clan. Therefore, I have already made an important decision regarding this matter. Fang Xiaodou rose to his feet and looked calmly at Meng Hao. I already discussed the matter with your father as well as Fang Yangsu and Pil Elder, and the decision has been made final. From now on, you will be the crown prince of the Fang clan. As soon as the words left Fang Xiaodao's mouth, Meng Hao's mind began to reel. Crown Prince? Meng Hao gaped for a moment. To virtually any other member of the Fang clan, a title like that represented supreme glory. However, to Meng Hao, it represented a future of endless amounts of spirit stones and immortal jade. That's right, Fang Xiaodao continued, his expression somewhat wistful. Currently, your cultivation base is weak. However, once you reach the Dao realm, you will be the clan chief of the Fang clan. As you know, it has been many, many years since a true clan chief has arisen. Fang Xiaodao looked at Meng Hao, his expression one of anticipation and love as he extended his hand, causing a command medallion to appear. It was violet-colored and glowed with a strange light. Although it was merely a command medallion, it was clearly a rare ancient realm treasure. This object is the official symbol of your status as Crown Prince. Once you reach the ancient realm, you can refine it into a true precious treasure. Fang Xiaodao waved his hand, causing the command medallion to fly over toward Meng Hao, where it settled down into his palm. That small command medallion felt as heavy as a whole mountain. If Meng Hao didn't possess a true, immortal, fleshly body, then he wouldn't even be able to hold it. This is your home, and you are a young lord here. In the future, you will be in a position of leadership, and therefore, all of the wealth here will eventually belong to you. If the clan is facing difficulties now, such as being extremely poor, then would it really be the right thing for you to take away the resources of the clan? As a young lord of the clan, you should actually be thinking of ways to increase the clan's wealth. Fang Xiaodao let out a long sigh, and a pained expression appeared on his face. If you don't believe me, I can take you to see for yourself. Fang Xiaodao waved his hand, causing both Meng Hao and himself to vanish. When they reappeared, they were inside of an enormous tower. Over here is where we used to have a mountain-like collection of immortal jade. Look at it now. This used to be filled with an indescribable amount of spirit stones. Now look at it. This area used to be packed tight with all sorts of magical items. Fang Xiaodao led Meng Hao through the clan's treasure houses, and although they weren't completely empty, they were depressingly bare. After finishing the tour, Meng Hao felt somewhat deflated. He almost couldn't believe that the Fang clan was actually destitute. Now do you understand? In addition to all this, the clan also bestowed you with that bloodline dragon. It was formed from the blood of the patriarch himself. Fang Xiaodao sighed. Meng Hao stood there silently for a long moment, then also sighed. Finally, he gave up on any plans of trying to get a reward from the clan. As Fang Xiaodao continued to stand there, sighing, Meng Hao turned to leave. Moments ago, he had even taken the time to peruse the treasure house records and knew that everything he had seen was the reality of the situation. He had also gone so far as to scan the lands with divine sense and could see how withered planet East Victory was. The places that once flourished with spiritual energy were now dried up. He also closed his eyes and, based on his bloodline, could sense something that no outsider would be able to sense. Planet East Victory was very weak. //. However, in the following days, as the sects and clans of the Ninth Mountain and Sea came to visit Planet East Victory and offered congratulations, everything that he had just seen began to change. He personally watched as all of the organizations which came to visit Planet East Victory brought significant gifts. If only one sect or clan came to visit, it wouldn't matter. But the 3 churches and 6 sects, the 5 great holy lands, and even the other 3 great clans, as well as other smaller organizations, all arrived. Meng Hao couldn't help but stare in shock. After doing a bit of calculating, he realized that if you added up the value of all the gifts brought by the various sects and clans, it reached a staggering total. Although it wouldn't be enough to fill the clan's treasure houses, it was enough to replenish them by about 30 to 40%. As Meng Hao watched Fang Xiaodao smilingly receive the various guests, he was increasingly struck with the impression that Fang Xiaodao was a crafty, wily fox. The old man had easily conned him, and there was nothing he could do about it. After all, everything the man had said earlier made complete sense. Meng Hao sighed and decided just to turn a blind eye to the matter. That was the only way to prevent himself from being incredibly irritated. However, he did not participate in the receiving of the guests, and instead stayed in his residence practicing cultivation, attempting to properly absorb his nirvana fruits. If it was just a simple matter of being conned this once, Meng Hao could deal with it. After all, he was now the crown prince, a status which he was very satisfied with. Several days later, however, the 3 great Taoist societies also arrived, and he heard that they had prepared an even more terrifying amount of congratulatory gifts. Each one of their gifts were comparable to the combined offerings from several smaller clans put together. This caused Meng Hao to think that something very fishy was going on. Elder brother Xiaodou, He'er is both crown prince of the Fang clan, as well as a conclave disciple of the Nine Seas God world. Please accept these meager offerings as the gifts of introduction we would have presented upon his joining the sect. When the cultivators from the Nine Seas God world arrived, Fang Zai immediately hustled over to Meng Hao's residence, where Meng Hao was meditating to break the news. Meng Hao was instantly enraged and his eyes went totally bloodshot. As of now, he thoroughly understood how crafty Fang Xiaodou was. He had definitely conned Meng Hao, big time. If Meng Hao weren't the crown prince, the three great Taoist societies would never have prepared such gifts. It was all because of his new status that the gifts the clan was receiving were so valuable. Meng Hao gritted his teeth and rose to his feet, then flew up into the air toward the main temple hall of the ancestral mansion, to the location where the welcoming feast was being held. Meng Hao didn't mind the fact that Fang Xiaodou had made him crown prince in order to get more gifts from the three great Taoist societies. What he did mind was that in such an important matter as this, Fang Xiaodou, that wily old fox, had actually not given him any share of it, not even a lousy 10%. Unacceptable. Both the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto and the immortal ancient Taoist rite also sent representatives with extravagant gifts. However, in comparison with the gifts offered by the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto and the Nine Seas God world, those given by the immortal ancient Taoist rite seemed much more simple. In the main hall of the Fang clan ancestral mansion, the patriarchs of the various sects and clans were all gathered around a long banquet table, where a grand feast was spread out. Elder brother Xiaodou, members of any clan or sect may join the three great Taoist societies. That is because the three great Taoist societies are fundamentally quite liberal when dealing with outsiders. That is how we groom generations of chosen in the Ninth Mountain and Sea. Elder brother Xiaodou, the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto focuses on the sword as our Tao. He'er's father Fang Ziyufeng is also known for his Tao of the sword. I truly think that He'er would have the most success if he joined the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto. The patriarchs continued to chat and laugh, as the three great Taoist societies began to argue and debate amongst themselves over who would get Meng Hao. Fang Yangsu and Fang Xiaodou sat in the middle of everyone. Fang Xiaodou was smiling and nodding, and anyone who didn't know him would think that he looked very kind and gentle. However, when Meng Hao looked at him, he looked like nothing more than the ultimate wily fox. Expand. Meng Hao had risen to the top among the true immortals and was the immortal realm paragon. After absorbing the nirvana fruits, he could leap into the legendary and ancient immortal emperor realm, in which he could slaughter ancient realm cultivators with 2 extinguished soul lamps. He had long since shaken the entire Ninth Mountain and Sea. When you added in his performance as Fang Mu in the three great Taoist societies, trial by fire, he was clearly the most prominent figure in the immortal realm. As a result, each of the three great Taoist societies was determined to have him. It wasn't just the three great Taoist societies. The 5 great holy lands and the 3 churches and 6 sects were all extremely interested in Meng Hao. If it weren't for the 3 great Taoist societies, whose positions were proud and lofty, and the fact that Meng Hao was now the crown prince of the Fang clan, meaning he couldn't join any other sect but one of the 3 great Taoist societies, then all of the other groups would definitely have started fighting over him. In addition to the Tao realm patriarchs from the other sects, Meng Hao saw various chosen with whom he had fought earlier. All of them stood there silently, complex emotions swirling in their hearts. His father might cultivate the Tao of the sword, but He'er's path is different. He's already become a conclave disciple of the Nine Seas God world. How could he possibly join the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto? In addition to Fan Donger's master, the old woman, the other person who had come from the Nine Seas God world, was none other than the man who had presided over the trial by fire, the same one who had eventually come to praise Meng Hao so much, Ling Yunzi. "Who cares about that?" said the representative from the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto, his tone harsh. He never formally joined the Nine Seas God world. He was a middle-aged man, or at least he looked middle-aged. In reality, his cultivation base was in the Tao realm, and he looked as dangerous as an unsheathed sword. Seeing that both the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto and the Nine Seas God world were not budging an inch, the old man who was the representative from the immortal ancient Taoist rite smiled slightly. "Fellow Taoist Fang," he said, "why don't you summon Meng Hao and ask him his opinion?" Fang Xiaodou laughed heartily, But before he could say anything, the main door to the temple hall echoed with the sound of a cold harumph. Meng Hao stalked in, instantly drawing the attention of all gazes inside the hall. As for the Dao Realm patriarchs, this was their first time seeing Meng Hao in person, as opposed to his illusory image on a screen. It was also the first time anyone from the three great Taoist societies had personally seen Meng Hao after he had reached true immortal ascension. Other than the various members of the junior generation, all the other people in the hall were Dao Realm patriarchs. It looked like more than half of all the Dao Realm experts in the entire Ninth Mountain and Sea were present. All of their eyes fell upon Meng Hao, causing him to feel enormous pressure. However, his expression didn't change at all as he entered the hall. He glared coldly at Fang Xiaodao, who cleared his throat a bit guiltily. Fang Yangsu sat off to the side, looking a bit helpless. He coughed dryly a few times. Everyone was looking at Meng Hao as he stated, "I will join." However, before he could finish speaking, the faces of the three patriarchs from the three great Taoist societies flickered. Intense gleams appeared in their eyes, especially the white-haired old man from the immortal ancient Taoist rite. Normally, he looked kind and amiable, but as of this moment, his eyes shone with an extreme brightness. When the members of the other sects saw this, they stared in shock. The old man from the immortal ancient Taoist rite sucked in a deep breath. His expression was very serious as he exchanged a glance with the old woman from the Nine Seas God world and the middle-aged man from the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto. Then he turned back to Fang Xiaodao and spoke gravely, "Elder brother Fang, permit us the use of a private chamber." Fang Xiaodao's eyes narrowed. He could tell something strange was going on, but after a moment of consideration, he nodded. Meng Hao was a bit astonished and quickly swallowed the words he had been about to utter. Fang Xiaodao waved his hand, and immediately he, along with Meng Hao and the three old-timers from the three great Taoist societies, all vanished from the main hall. Fang Yangsu was also disconcerted, but this was the Fang clan after all, so he wasn't worried. Instead, he smiled and began to chat with some of the others who remained behind. It didn't take long for the sound of conversation and laughter to fill the main hall once again. However, suspicions now filled the hearts of all the Dao Realm experts, even though it didn't show on their faces. Fang Xiaodao and the others reappeared within a hidden chamber in the Fang clan. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed, and his heart filled with misgivings. He immediately stepped back a few paces. "Fellow Taoists," said Fang Xiaodao, "please explain why we need to use this private chamber." Fang Xiaodao might be an old fox and he might have conned Meng Hao, but as he stepped forward, he placed himself very close to Meng Hao. If anything untoward happened, he would go all out with his cultivation base to make sure Meng Hao stayed safe. Despite the previous con, everything he had said was actually true. Meng Hao really was as important to the Fang clan as a Dao Realm expert. Furthermore, appointing Meng Hao to be the crown prince had not been a joke. He really and truly did have that status in the clan. Seeing Fang Xiaodao act in this way finally caused Meng Hao to have the feeling that the man really was the clan's Earth Patriarch. "Elder brother Fang, this is our first time seeing Meng Hao in person," said the old man from the immortal ancient Taoist rite. "On previous occasions, we only saw him on illusory screens and could not feel the ripples which are emanating off of him." The old man looked excited and breathed heavily when he looked at Meng Hao. The old woman from the Nine Seas God world and the middle-aged cultivator from the Sublime Flow Sword Grotto looked equally moved. Fang Xiaodao frowned, taking a few more steps forward to stand directly next to Meng Hao, whereupon he stared coldly at the other three. For Hayar to reach this point means he definitely has his destiny. He is the crown prince of the Fang clan, and if anybody tries to steal his destiny, that person will be crossing the line and provoking the Fang clan's wrath. Fang Xiaodao's expression was extremely serious, and his tone was icy. Meng Hao stood behind him, staring in shock. All of a sudden, he came to the realization that the true use of being the crown prince was a sort of protection. His rise to true immortality had attracted the attention of the entire Ninth Mountain and Sea, and now that he was the crown prince, anyone who harbored untoward thoughts would definitely be stricken with fear. Meng Hao could sense the care and concern of the senior generation of the clan, and his heart softened quite a bit. It even caused his perception of Fang Xiaodao as a wily fox to lessen quite a bit. "Elder brother Fang, you misunderstand," said the old man from the immortal ancient Taoist rite, looking over at Meng Hao. "Meng Hao, back when you disappeared into the ruins of immortality, did you by any chance encounter a white-robed woman?" It was impossible for the old man to conceal the nervousness in his voice as he asked his question. The old woman and the middle-aged cultivator wore equally nervous expressions. Meng Hao gaped. After a long moment of silence, he slowly nodded his head in response. "I knew it," exclaimed the old man, sounded very excited. Strange gleams appeared in the eyes of the old woman and the middle-aged cultivator. The old man took a deep breath and then made a clutching motion, causing a chunk of black stone to appear in his hand. At the same time, the old woman and the middle-aged cultivator produced similar stones. All three of the rocks emanated mysterious glows as they flew together to form a large stone slab, which hovered in midair. "Child, place your hand onto that black stone slab," said the old man, sounding very excited. "Don't worry, the three of us don't harbor any ill intentions toward you." He looked at Meng Hao with anticipation. Fang Xiaodao frowned. The three great Taoist societies were acting very strange as far as he was concerned, and he was just about to intervene when Meng Hao's eyes glittered. As for Meng Hao, he had long since speculated that the white-robed woman was somehow connected to the three great Taoist societies. Instead of placing his hand onto the stone slab, he asked, "That white-robed woman, who is she?" "Long ago, our world did not consist of only 9 mountains and 9 seas," responded the old woman from the 9 seas god world, her voice soft. "During that era, that white-robed woman was one of 3 supreme paragons." Meng Hao's mind trembled, and he didn't respond. Finally, he lifted his right hand and calmly placed it onto the stone slab. He was already aware of exactly what these 3 people were hoping to see. Blinding light emanated out as soon as his hand made contact with the stone slab. When the light touched Meng Hao, an ancient magical symbol suddenly appeared on his forehead. That magical symbol was actually a number. The number 13. 13th in the echelon. When the old man from the immortal ancient Taoist rite saw the magical symbol in the shape of a number, he threw his head back and laughed. His entire body quivered with excitement. The old woman from the 9 seas god world began to pant excitedly, and her expression was one of delight. As for the middle-aged man from the sublime flow sword grotto, he was also panting, and appeared to be going wild with joy. The echelon, as expected, the echelon. Meng Hao has actually joined the echelon. The echelon prescribed and maintained by a paragon, the echelon of the 9 mountains and seas, the key to leaving heaven and earth. He's the second from the 9th mountain and sea to enter. Meng Hao pulled his hand back, and the light emanating from the stone slab faded away. Fang Xiaodao frowned. Inwardly, he was shocked, not because of the magical symbol that had appeared on Meng Hao's forehead, but rather because of the excitement of the representatives from the 3 great Taoist societies. "Fellow Taoists, could you please provide an explanation?" he said coolly, becoming even more vigilant than ever. "Elder Brother Fang, this matter pertains to the mission of our 3 great Taoist societies," said the old man. The old woman and the middle-aged man stood off to the side, the expressions on their face solemn once again. "The information we are about to share with you must not be spread beyond this room. Every so often, the 3 great Taoist societies hold a trial by fire. Its purpose is to search for suitable cultivators for that very paragon to observe as she searches for people qualified to join the echelon. The echelon determines the true blazing suns of the entire 9 mountains and seas. People who join the echelon are actually qualified to become legends. Furthermore, the echelon is wrapped up in an enormous mystery, a secret that affects all 9 mountains and seas. In fact, the origin of Lord Li himself is very likely connected to that mystery. For many, many years, the 9th mountain and sea has not produced anyone qualified to join the echelon. As of today, we now have a second. The first person to qualify for the echelon is no stranger to you. It was actually none other than the first-generation patriarch of your Fang clan. Sadly, although he met the requirements, when the time came for him to accomplish the tasks required by the paragon, he ended up refusing to comply. He actually renounced his own qualifications. Elder Brother Fang, this child cannot join just one of our organizations. He is actually the sole successor of all 3 great Taoist societies. He is not a disciple, he is a successor. When cultivators of the echelon appear on any of the mountains or seas, they instantly become crucially important to any of the Taoist societies, and will be protected as such. Elder Brother Xiaodao, this child's path is definitely not limited to the 9th mountain and sea. The fighting that goes on amongst those who wish to enter the echelon is even fiercer than the fighting which goes on among those who wish to be chosen. As such, we must not allow Meng Hao's status as a member of the echelon to spread prematurely. It won't be long before we arrange for him to leave the ninth mountain and sea and participate in the echelon battles of the 9 mountains and seas. Please place him in our care. We 3 great Taoist societies are pledged to and exist solely for the sake of the echelon. Chapter 1008, Why the Echelon Exists. Chapter 1009, I'm already married. Meng Hao's eyes flashed, and he stood there, silent and unresponsive as he listened to the 3 great Taoist societies discuss both him and the echelon with Fang Xiaodou. He didn't mind this. As soon as he had been appointed to the echelon by that white-robed woman, he had known that the matter would eventually come to be known by others. Meng Hao was a cautious person, but now that the matter of the echelon had been discovered by the 3 great Taoist societies, trying to conceal the truth would have been pointless. As of now, it made sense for the clan to be made aware of it too. At least then he would have a foundation of protection. Fang Xiaodou didn't respond at first. After some thought he finally said, "This is a weighty matter, something I cannot make a decision on by myself. How about this? Fellow Taoists, please return to the hall for now. I'll discuss the situation with Haor privately, and then we'll give you an answer." The representatives from the 3 great Taoist societies exchanged glances and then nodded. In the blink of an eye, they left the private chamber and reappeared out in the main hall. After they were gone, Meng Hao glared at Fang Xiaodou, who looked back at him, cleared his throat, and then smiled. From Meng Hao's perspective, that smile looked far too treacherous, causing him give a loud harumph. Fang Xiaodou cleared his throat, then eyed Meng Hao and said, "I'll give you 1%. He was well aware that he hadn't brought up the matter of splitting the profits. "Impossible, I demand 50%, Meng Hao responded immediately. Fang Xiaodou frowned and then said, "All of these gifts are very important to the clan. At the very most, I can give you 2%. Do you know what I've done for the clan? Meng Hao was just about to launch into a long explanation when Fang Xiaodou interrupted with a loud sigh. "Haor, you're the crown prince of the clan," he said, looking very disappointed. He sounded pained as he continued, "Don't you know that as the crown prince, you receive special protection from the clan? That shows how much the clan approves of you. How does a piddling profit the likes of which we're discussing now compare to that? This is your home. And right now, your home is in a very tight spot. The first-generation patriarch is sleeping, and the planet is weak. Other than the resources spent on the fundamental cultivation needs of the clan, everything else is used on the planet itself. Plus, we have to be on guard against the Jai clan. In addition to all that, we have to keep some resources in reserve in case we need to awaken the first-generation patriarch again. Meng Hao, do you understand what I'm saying? Considering all of those things, how could the clan possibly agree to send our magnificent crown prince to the 3 great Taoist societies to practice cultivation? The Fang clan is your home, and you are one of our family members. You're even a young lord of the clan. Now is the time for you to forego a bit of profit to ensure that the clan can have some breathing room. Can you agree to that? In the future, everything in the clan will belong to you, right? If you think this isn't fair, then go ahead and just take all the gifts. I don't want any of it." With that, Fang Xiaodou closed his eyes and sighed. Meng Hao stood there silently. All of a sudden he felt like he really was putting too much emphasis on wealth and felt a bit bad. Finally, he nodded his head. "No, I'm fine," he said. "Forget about it." Fang Xiaodou opened his eyes, and the kindness in them was apparent as he patted Meng Hao on the shoulder. "Good boy," he said. Then he waved his sleeve, causing both of them to vanish and reappear in the main hall. The banquet continued, and eventually it was with much anticipation that the 3 great Taoist societies listened as Meng Hao announced that he would join their ranks. However, Fang Xiaodou, citing Meng Hao's cultivation base as the reason, said that they would have to return in 3 months to accept him officially. Meng Hao was crestfallen. Although he understood that the clan was in a very difficult situation, when he thought about the vast amount of spirit stones pouring in, not a single one of which were going to him, it filled his heart with pain. It doesn't matter. The patriarch was right. I'm a member of the clan and should act as such." Consoling himself all the way, Meng Hao said his goodbyes and then stepped out of the hall. Just when he was about to fly away, 2 bright beams of light whistled through the air toward the main hall. Members of the Fang clan flew nearby in escort, and as the beams of light neared, it turned out to be people from the Li clan. One was Li Linger, whose face was grim and unsightly. Next to her was a middle-aged man who had the bearing of a transcendent being. His features were handsome, and his aura was extremely strong with the power of essence. When Li Linger saw Meng Hao, she gritted her teeth and her eyes blazed with fury. In contrast, the middle-aged man's eyes shone brightly and he laughed heartily. "Ah, handsome as expected," he said. "Before, I could only observe with divine sense, but now that I can look upon you in person, kid, I have to say, excellent. Truly excellent." The man laughed as he walked into the hall. Li Linger walked past Meng Hao, glaring daggers at him. She looked extremely disgruntled, as if her life was so unfair that she were on the verge of completely losing her temper. Meng Hao stared in shock. Something definitely seemed off. Instead of leaving, he stopped and looked back. The first thing he noticed was Fang Xiaodao rising to his feet, and then he heard the middle-aged man from the Li clan laugh and begin to speak. "Elder brother Xiaodao, after I got your Jade slip, I immediately called a clan meeting to discuss the matter. Hayar is a wonderful kid, and I've really taken a liking to him. In fact, the entire Li clan agrees. We all support Hayar, and once he becomes the clan chief of the Fang clan in the future, our two clans will have a powerful alliance. I have come here today prepared to give a Dao realm treasure, 100 precious ancient realm treasures, 1,000 immortal treasures, 100 million immortal jades, 10 billion spirit stones, as well as numerous other items, as the wedding gift for Hayar and Linger." Laughing heartily, the man from the Li clan clasped hands and bowed toward Fang Xiaodao. The way he listed out all the gifts he was enough to cause even the Dao realm experts to stare in shock. Such extravagant gift-giving was something rarely seen. However, as soon as they heard the word wedding, everyone reached an epiphany. Meng Hao was no longer an ordinary clan member. He was the #1 chosen of the Fang clan, a famous blazing sun in the 9th mountain and sea, and even a crown prince. With a status like that, any organization would offer up lavish gifts to form an alliance. A broad smile could be seen on Fang Xiaodao's face as he walked forward, laughing. "Elder brother Li, you're far too polite," he said. "Hayar and this lastlinger have been engaged since childhood. I just decided to speed up the matter a bit, that's all." Fang Xiaodao looked over kindly at Li Linger. Meng Hao stood just outside the door to the main temple, gaping in shock. His jaw hung open and his eyes were wide. He almost couldn't believe what was happening, and he felt his mind spinning. "He sold me off," he murmured. He suddenly began to tremble and rage began to burn inside of him. Generally speaking, it would be the woman who received betrothal gifts, but considering that this was the Fang clan, they were the ones to receive the gifts. What Meng Hao was even more incapable of accepting was that everything that Fang Xiaodao had said moments ago had clearly been a huge con that he had fallen right into. In the end, he could accept all of that for the clan. He could part with all the extravagant gifts, despite the pain it caused him. However, what was happening now had nothing to do with money. Meng Hao's mind suddenly filled with the image of a red wedding, of endless slaughter. That wedding had been one of the most painful moments of his life. He saw himself holding Su Qing in his arms until she gradually closed her eyes and faded away. Unforgettable stabs of pain once again filled his heart. Just barely, he felt as if he could see into the cycle of reincarnation, and all of a sudden, he heard a voice which echoed eternally in his ears. "I'm in the cycle of reincarnation, waiting for you." Although Meng Hao often seemed to treat other women flirtatiously, in truth, there was a place deep in his heart where only one woman could enter. Chu Yuyan could not enter that place, so therefore, how could Li Linger possibly do so? That was a place for only one person. It was a place that belonged only to Su Qing. Meng Hao took a deep breath. His eyes shone with coldness, and even as everyone chatted and laughed, he suddenly spoke out, his voice icy. "Patriarch, I'm already married." As soon as his voice rang out, the entire hall went completely silent. The middle-aged man from the Li clan turned to glance at Meng Hao, then looked back at Fang Xiaodao. Li Linger's eyes brightened with anticipation. Fang Xiaodao coughed dryly and transmitted his voice to Meng Hao. "I'll give you 20% of the Li clan's betrothal gift." Meng Hao's face was extremely calm, and his eyes were icy as he stared back wordlessly at Fang Xiaodao. "You little hoodlum. Fine, 50%, no more. You know that the clan is in a difficult place right now, and I—" "Patriarch," Meng Hao interrupted, his voice calm. "I, Meng Hao, love money. However, not everything in the world can be negotiated in terms of money and profit." I said, "I'm already married. I have a wife, and her name is Su Qing." He spoke the words earnestly and very clearly. All eyes in the main hall shifted to look at Meng Hao. With the exception of the Dao realm patriarchs, the other members of the senior generation, as well as all the chosen Meng Hao had fought with, had strange looks in their eyes. They stared at Meng Hao, their gazes shining. Li Linger was very pretty, and would be the type of beloved partner that any clan would view as favorable. Furthermore, the backing of the Li clan would enable Meng Hao to achieve future accomplishments with much greater ease, and he could definitely reach greater heights of glory. Nobody could understand why Meng Hao would flat-out reject such an opportunity. Li Linger had originally looked forward to seeing Meng Hao reject the offer, but for some reason, when she heard his explanation and saw how serious he was, she suddenly realized that he seemed very different from the scoundrel she remembered. In fact, he seemed to be hiding some great pain deep within him, a fact that caused her to tremble slightly. "Where is she?" asked Fang Xiaodou, sounding very stern. "On planet South Heaven." He looked at Meng Hao a bit more seriously than he had before, and his tone was very grave. "She's not on planet South Heaven," Meng Hao replied softly. "She's in the cycle of reincarnation, waiting for me to go find her." He could no longer prevent the grief from showing on his face. All of a sudden, he saw the vague image of a simple young woman standing in front of him, wearing a plain robe. She was the one who had taken him into the world of cultivation. She wasn't shockingly beautiful, but somehow, she had worked her way into his heart. He had given her a cosmetic cultivation pill, and in the end, they had experienced a red wedding together. She was Su Qing, his kinger. She had sacrificed her longevity for him. She had entered reincarnation for him. As she died, she had forced a smile onto her face, for him. In Meng Hao's arms, she had turned from being beautiful and young into a white-haired old woman. She had withered up and closed her eyes. She had attempted to lift her hand up, as if to wipe the tears off of his face, but then that hand had slumped down lifelessly. That was the image he saw. "Her name is Su Qing," he continued softly. "She's waiting for me in reincarnation, and we made a promise that I would go find her. She is my wife, my one and only wife." With that, he bowed to Fang Xiaodou, then turned and flew off, his expression one of pain, grief, and bleakness. Back in the main hall, everyone was shaken. They could sense the grief in Meng Hao, and could tell that, although he usually seemed happy and frivolous on the outside, he was actually filled with a sea of sorrow and longing. Li Linger shivered as she watched Meng Hao leave. As of this moment, the detestation she felt toward him was not so profound, and in fact, deep in her heart, pity took root. Note from Ergen, I miss Su Qing. Chapter 10:10, A Wager. After several days of banqueting, the three great Taoist societies left, as did all of the other various sects and clans. The matter of the wedding contract with the Li clan wasn't resolved. Fang Xiaodou wouldn't waver in the matter, however, and continued to press for time. Over the course of a few days, Fang Xiaodou summoned Meng Hao on multiple occasions, but Meng Hao was in a different position than he had been. He wasn't just any young lord of the clan, he was now a blazing sun. Therefore, he completely ignored Fang Xiaodou, putting the matter off by focusing on cultivating the nirvana fruits. 3 days later, as he sat in secluded meditation in his residence, Fang Xiaodou came for a personal visit. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he sent his aura out, and Meng Hao immediately opened his eyes. It was in that moment that Fang Xiaodou appeared in front of him. His face was grave as he looked Meng Hao over. Then he let out a long sigh and sat down cross-legged. Meng Hao sat in place quietly, not saying a word. "She's really that important to you?" Fang Xiaodou asked slowly, looking at Meng Hao. Meng Hao was actually extremely important to Fang Xiaodou, so important that Meng Hao didn't even realize the extent of it. To Fang Xiaodou, the most crucial matter at hand was ensuring that the Fang clan was able to survive over the next 1,000 years. After that, he wanted to help Meng Hao grow and mature. That was one reason why he didn't refuse the three great Taoist societies' proposal. He believed that in the three great Taoist societies, Meng Hao would definitely acquire better cultivation magic than he could in the Fang clan. As for the clan's financial predicament, that was something in which he had not deceived Meng Hao. "She's my wife," Meng Hao replied, his voice soft, his head bowed. After a moment of silence, Fang Xiaodou spoke. Although he didn't sound somber like he had when negotiating prices with Meng Hao, his tone of voice and his expression seemed far more serious and intense than they had at that time. "Can't you just let her go? You're the crown prince of the Fang clan, just forget about her." "If you can't let go of her forever," he said quietly, "then how about for just 1,000 years? If you don't like the Li clan last, then you don't have to pay attention to her at all. All the clan wants is an alliance. It's the same with the Li clan. They just want an alliance. The marriage is just a formality." Meng Hao looked up at Fang Xiaodou for a moment, then slapped his bag of holding to produce the ancient realm precious treasure that was his crown prince command medallion. He rubbed it for a moment before carefully placing it down in front of Fang Xiaodou. Fang Xiaodou's eyes widened, and waves of rage began to surge out inside of him. He looked at Meng Hao, his expression one of pain. In your heart, is that girl really more important than the entire clan? The disappointment on Fang Xiaodou's face was clear. This was true disappointment, not an act like before. Patriarch, I don't remember much about my early life on planet East Victory, he murmured. What I do remember from my childhood is that my dad and mom left. I have a memory of searching for them in the fog, crying because I couldn't find them. After I grew up, I took the imperial examinations over and over again. Back then, my dream was to be rich when I grew up. Eventually, I ran into her, and I joined a sect. That was how I came to be part of the cultivation world. She's actually my senior sister from that sect. After that, Meng Hao told Fang Xiaodou everything about Su Qing. He recounted all the stories and all the details that he could remember. Patriarch, there was one time in which I died. She ruined her own longevity just to save me. When we got married, it was a red wedding soaked in blood. I promised her that I would find her in reincarnation. As his voice echoed out, filled with the sensation of memories, Fang Xiaodou's face gradually softened. He looked at Meng Hao for a long moment, then sighed. It's just a formality, he said, closing his eyes. Why do you have to be like this? To the clan, it might just be a formality, Meng Hao replied calmly. But to me, it would be a betrayal. Patriarch, please appoint someone else as the crown prince. The Li clan doesn't want a beloved partner for Li Linger. All they want is an alliance. It doesn't matter who it is. Anyone could be a match for her. Why does it have to be me? So please just appoint someone else. It would be the perfect solution for the clan. Fang Xiaodou maintained his silence. After a long moment, he rose to his feet and swished his sleeve. He did not take the crown prince command medallion, but instead sent it floating back into Meng Hao's palm. In 3 months, the 3 great Taoist societies will come for you. I've already prepared 1,500,000,000 spirit stones for you to take with you to use in your cultivation. I wasn't going to tell you about this originally, but considering you can't accept the marriage, well, do you dare to make a little wager with me? If you win, then I'll take responsibility to cancel the marriage contract. But if you lose, then you can't reject the arrangements made by the clan, and you'll go through with the formalities. Meng Hao stood there silently. Hey, Fang Xiaodou continued with a sigh. If your grandfather was still here in the clan, he would definitely persuade you for me. Fang Xiaodou thought of Meng Hao's grandfather, who was actually the person that he had most favored among the junior generations. In fact, in his view, Meng Hao's grandfather would have eventually become the clan's 3rd Dao realm expert. A tremor ran through Meng Hao as he recalled the vague image of his grandfather, an image he would never be able to forget. Meng Hao's parents had left to guard planet South Heaven for 100,000 years. As for his grandfather, he had gone to search for an outsider to ask for help. The outsider came, but his grandfather had gone missing and had never made contact with the clan again. Feeling quite bitter, Meng Hao looked up at Fang Xiaodou. What's the bet? Before the 3 great Taoist societies arrive, do everything you can to earn 1,500,000,000 spirit stones. Immortal Jade doesn't count. If you can do that, from then on the clan won't require that you do anything you don't want to. You must not resort to trickery, theft, or borrowing. I won't interfere either. Meng Hao stared in shock for a moment. Then, he lowered his head and made some calculations. When he looked back up, his expression was calm again. Gazing at Fang Xiaodou with a slightly pained expression, he nodded. Fang Xiaodou said nothing further. He stood up, turned, and vanished. After he left, Meng Hao began to breathe heavily. 1,000 ideas were running through his head. He knew that he was a member of the clan, and that it was impossible to sever that blood connection. His parents, his grandfather, and his other relatives would not agree to him severing ties with the Fang clan. Furthermore, the clan had not given Meng Hao any reason to do anything that would violate the rules. If there was a wager, he would win it. 3 months, 1,500,000,000 spirit stones. Although he wasn't aware of it, a bashful expression had appeared on his face at some point. As far as he was concerned, winning that bet wouldn't be difficult at all. He put away the Crown Prince Command medallion and stood up. Then he turned into a beam of prismatic light that shot away to find Fang's eye. 2 days later, word began to spread throughout the Fang clan. It didn't take long before all the clan members were talking about the same thing. Did you hear? The Crown Prince is going to challenge the Medicine Pavilion. Last time he got through 6 levels with perfect marks. The Dao bell even rang. Last time he challenged the medicine pavilion, he got to the 7th level, where he grafted 75,000 types of medicinal plants. Everyone is saying that this time, the Crown Prince is definitely going to charge all the way to the 10th level. The news quickly spread until everyone in the clan had heard about it. All of them were inwardly shaken. Lately, Meng Hao was like the sun at high noon within the clan and was the focus of all attention. Everything he said or did was noticed. Besides, the glory he had already achieved in the Tao of Alchemy division was well known. Now that he was going to be heading back there, everyone in the clan was filled with anticipation. That anticipation reached a peak on one particular morning at dawn, when Meng Hao flew out of his residence and headed toward the Tao of Alchemy division, his immortal realm Paragon Cultivation base surging with power. He was followed by numerous members of the Fang clan, who all wanted to witness the spectacle. More and more people started to tag along. By the time he reached the Tao of Alchemy division, huge amounts of Fang clan cultivators were there, filling the sky as he headed toward the medicine pavilion. The alchemists and apprentice alchemists of the Tao of Alchemy division were all very excited as they joined in the procession. The entire Tao of Alchemy division was abuzz. Countless beams of colorful light shot through the air as Meng Hao landed outside of the medicine pavilion. He looked at the huge stone stele next to the entrance, and his eyes glittered. The same two old men who stood guard outside opened their eyes. When they saw Meng Hao, they slowly rose to their feet, clasped hands, and bowed. "Greetings, Crown Prince," they said in unison. Meng Hao nodded, and without further word stepped into the medicine pavilion. As he did, the entire area was packed with clan members, all of whom were waiting to watch. Fang Zai was in the crowd. He quickly sent word out via Jade's slip, and a moment later, roughly 10,000 clan members rose up in various positions and began to cry out. The Crown Prince is challenging the medicine pavilion. This is a grand event in the Fang clan, and it is an honor for anyone to be able to bear witness. I personally wish to offer 100 spirit stones as a congratulatory gift. If anyone else is willing to offer a similar gift, please place it into this bag of holding. That's right, I don't have a lot of spirit stones, but I'm willing to give 50 as a gift of congratulations to the Crown Prince. Of course, this is how things should work. The Crown Prince is challenging the medicine pavilion. As fellow clan members, it's only natural that we should offer gifts of congratulations. Here's 100 spirit stones. As the calls rang out, more people produced spirit stones to place in the bags of holding. Others hesitated, but then increasing numbers began to do the same thing. Very soon, a terrifying amount of spirit stones had built up within the bags of holding. When Fang Xiaodao saw what was happening, he stared in shock for a moment and then smacked his forehead. His expression immediately changed. Damn it, how could I have forgotten? I remember hearing about how Meng Hao charged people in the Tao of Alchemy division to hear his lectures about plants and vegetation. Then Fang Xiaodao thought about the rewards posted for the 3 holy medicinal pills, and a feeling of alarm built up in his heart. Those 3 medicinal pills included first, the Skypalist Sunspirit pill, which Meng Hao had already concocted. The second was the Sea-Cleaving Heaven-Defying pill, the reward for which was 1 billion spirit stones. The third was the Heavenly Thought pill. The incredible reward for concocting that pill was to become the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy division. All of a sudden, Fang Xiaodao gasped. After a long moment, he managed to recover his senses and realized that this time he had been conned by Meng Hao. "You little hoodlum," he thought, laughing bitterly. However, his eyes quickly glittered. However, he didn't choose to go concoct the pills, he murmured, but instead to challenge the medicine pavilion. That indicates that he's not completely confident in his concocting abilities. In that case, I haven't necessarily lost the bet. However, he still was a bit worried, so he suddenly vanished. When he reappeared, he was in the Medicine Immortal sect, where he went to consult with Fang Yangsu. Not too long after, he left the Medicine Immortal sect, and his face was very calm. Based on what Fang Yangsu told him, he was now confident in what would happen. Not even Fang Yangsu can concoct the Heavenly Thought pill. As for the Sea-Cleaving Heaven-Defying pill, it's equally difficult. The little hoodlum definitely can't concoct them relying on his own skill alone. I told him that I wouldn't interfere, but that doesn't mean I can't use other methods. Fang Xiaodao appeared to be very pleased, and looked more like a crafty old fox than ever. Chapter 10-11, Challenging the Medicine Pavilion Again. Tao of Alchemy Division, Medicine Pavilion. As soon as Meng Hao set foot inside, he was once again on the 7th level. Last time he passed 6 levels in a row, achieving the highest marks possible at each level. He passed them perfectly. Notably, on the 6th level, each step he took caused lotuses to bloom, shocking the outside world and causing the Tao bell to toll. Now he had returned, and in addition to his desire to earn some money, he was filled with determination, as well as dedication to the Tao of alchemy. This time, I'm definitely going to go through all 9 levels. Everyone in the 9th mountain and Xi knew that Meng Hao was an immortal realm paragon, but few people were aware that his skill in the Tao of alchemy had reached a point of perfection that could only be described by the saying, "The pill furnace flame turned blue." 1. The pill furnace flame turning blue is a Chinese idiom based on the beliefs of ancient Chinese alchemists, who thought that, when the flame of their pill furnace turned blue when concocting, it was a perfect success. It's now an expression that means to reach a point of perfection. The last time he was on the 7th level, he had grafted 75,000 medicinal plants, and yet, his mental focus had been insufficient. If he had persisted in continuing, he would have sustained mental injuries. The concentration required to pass that level perfectly required an incredible level of mental constitution. Furthermore, at that time, Meng Hao's skill with plants and vegetation had not reached a state of perfection. However, he was now much more skilled regarding the numerous variations of plants and vegetation in the Fang clan. Furthermore, the difference between his current cultivation base and his former one was like the difference between heaven and earth. Meng Hao was now completely confident that he could pass all the way through the 9th floor. Inside the medicine pavilion, mist swirled everywhere. The classic of plants and vegetation appeared, glowing with boundless light. The first pages flipped over and Meng Hao waved his finger, causing a single medicinal plant to appear. His eyes shone with the glow of augury, and in the blink of an eye, he began to produce new grafts. Eventually, he began to merge the grafts together to produce entirely new medicinal plants. Time passed. This time, Meng Hao only used half a day to graft 75,000 medicinal plants, whereupon the mists churned, and rumbling sounds could be heard. The rumbling could even be heard outside of the medicine pavilion, where a bright light shone from the entire pavilion, rising up into the air above the Tao of Alchemy division. It was as if the light was building up pressure, waiting for Meng Hao to reach the pinnacle of the level, whereupon it would burst up into the sky. All of the alchemists in the Tao of Alchemy division were paying rapt attention. Fang Danian was there on his mountain peak, looking over with an expression of anticipation. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he extended his hand and continued to graft. 80,000, 83,000, 86,000. 8 hours later, he had grafted 90,000 medicinal plants. Massive rumbling sounds could be heard coming from the medicine pavilion. To date, no one had ever been able to graft as many plants as Meng Hao had in the 7th level. He was the first one to ever do so. Currently, his name appeared on the stone stele outside of the medicine pavilion, and the number of medicinal plants he had grafted was clearly visible to all of the other clan members, causing a huge commotion among them. 90,000. However, that wasn't the end. The drain on Meng Hao's mental faculties was barely even noticeable. His mental constitution had greatly increased compared to before. His eyes glittered, and he lifted both hands, multitasking as he used both hands to graft different medicinal plants. Rumbling like that of thunder could be heard outside the medicine pavilion, as the number of grafted plants next to Meng Hao's name increased. 93,000, 96,000, 99,000, all the way to 100,000. When the last grafted medicinal plant appeared, Meng Hao was surrounded by 100,000 swirling plants. They let out incredible light that spread out of the medicine pavilion, shooting up into the air in a brilliant beam. The light instantly shot high up into the air above the Tao of Alchemy division, causing everything to tremble. The entire Fang clan was shaken, and all of the cultivators on planet East Victory could see the light. Even the alchemists in the medicine immortal sect were shocked. As for Fang Yangsu, although he was in secluded meditation, he opened his eyes and looked over toward the Tao of Alchemy division, clearly moved. He passed the 7th level perfectly, he murmured lightly. Well, the 8th level is so difficult it can't even compare to the 7th. They're completely different. Meanwhile, the Fang clan's Tao bell appeared in the air above the ancestral mansion. Immediately, its toll echoed out into the minds of all clan members with Fang clan blood, deep and sonorous. The toll of the Tao bell indicated that Meng Hao had passed the 7th level in exactly the same way that he had passed the 6th, perfectly. Furthermore, it had only taken him 1 day. Word rapidly spread that he had passed the 7th level perfectly, having grafted 100,000 medicinal plants. The members of the Fang clan suddenly realized that their crown prince was not just a blazing sun in terms of cultivation. He was also a blazing sun when it came to skill in the Tao of alchemy. Meng Hao had no way to hear or see the uproar in the outside world. Up ahead, light swirled throughout the 7th level, causing a staircase to appear, a staircase that led up to the 8th level. Meng Hao took a deep breath. Eyes filled with determination, he stepped onto the stairs and began to climb up. Immediately, all the light around him vanished, and Meng Hao found himself looking out at a huge desert. The sky stretched out limitlessly, and up ahead, he could see an azure-colored dragon. It lay there completely motionless as if it were a corpse. The dragon was so huge that one glance was not enough to take in the entire thing. Upon closer inspection, it could be seen that it was actually composed of countless medicinal plants that were apparently growing on the dragon's body, using its flesh and blood as nourishment. He was standing near the tail of the dragon, but even from there, he could sense the terrifying life force that existed inside of it. However, that life force was sealed, and was apparently being absorbed bit by the numerous medicinal plants. This is the 8th level, he thought. Almost at the same time, a cold, archaic voice spoke, echoing out through the entire 8th level. 1,000,000 medicinal plants grow upon this azure dragon. Separate 100,000, and you can pass this level. Meng Hao's eyes shone with bright light as he looked at the azure dragon. Gradually, a look of obsession appeared in his eyes. In the 7th level, you have to graft various medicinal plants. In the 8th level, you are faced with numerous grafted medicinal plants that you have to deconstruct. Return them into their original state, into the original medicinal plants. The level of difficulty here is far, far greater than the 7th level. However, if I can pass this level perfectly, then my skill with plants and vegetation would reach an unprecedented level. I can't even imagine a level of difficulty regarding knowledge of plants and vegetation that exceeds this 8th level. Meng Hao's heart surged with the determination to face this challenge head-on. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. As soon as his foot touched the ground, brilliant light flickered, and an illusory medicinal plant appeared in front of him, blocking his way. He looked at it for a moment, then waved his finger, causing the medicinal plant to break apart into 3 distinct plants, after which it faded away. Without even pausing, he continued forward. Every step he took caused more medicinal plants to appear. Each and every one took only a single glance before it was deconstructed. 10 steps, 100 steps, 1,000 steps, 10,000 steps. Time passed. Meng Hao eventually took 30,000 steps, which indicated that he had deconstructed 30,000 medicinal plants. As he proceeded along, the azure dragon beneath his feet began to show indications that it was awakening. From the look of it, if someone could deconstruct all 1,000,000 medicinal plants, then the dragon would no longer be sealed and would once again be able to fly through the heavens. Outside of the medicine pavilion, Meng Hao's name appeared on the stone stele, among the relatively few other names that had reached the 8th level. Everyone looked on, wide-eyed, as his name quickly climbed up the list. Booms emanated out from the medicine pavilion, filling the ears of all onlookers. When they heard it, it almost seemed as if the sounds could control the beating of their hearts, which caused the entire Tao of Alchemy division to fall silent. All eyes were completely fixed on the medicine pavilion. Meng Hao proceeded forward along the azure dragon in the 8th level, 15,000 steps, 18,000 steps, 20,000 steps, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. He didn't even pause a single time. Step after step, he deconstructed medicinal plants. Because of his skill with plants and vegetation, none of these medicinal plants were even qualified to cause him to spend time thinking. The sound filled the Tao of Alchemy division and gradually began to resemble the roar of a dragon. By this point, Meng Hao had taken his 70,000th step. Step by step, plant by plant, he continued onward as relentlessly as ever. 80,000, 90,000, 100,000. By taking his 100,000th step, it indicated that he had separated 100,000 medicinal plants from the azure dragon, which was now beginning to glow with brilliant light and even tremble slightly. Meng Hao took a deep breath and his eyes glittered brightly. Naturally, 100,000 was not his limit. If he had never come to this place, none of this would have mattered, but now that he was here, he wanted to reach the pinnacle. A tremor ran through him and he took another step forward. Slowly but surely he continued onward. 100,000, 150,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000. The azure dragon's trembling grew more intense, and the roars were now echoing out through all of heaven and earth. The members of the Fang clan outside the medicine pavilion were completely shaken as they watched Meng Hao's name climbing up the stone stele. It had long since reached first place, but the thing that really caused the onlookers to be amazed were the numbers that stood next to his name. Meng Hao's eyes shone with a strange light as he continued on. 550,000, 600,000, 700,000, 800,000. When he reached 800,000, his pace began to slow. However, at this point his energy surged even more explosively than before. He was now drawing on all of his mental constitution. His eyes glowed with a mad light of augury. The level of skill with plants and vegetation that was on display here was intense as he drew on everything to proceed onward. 830,000, 860,000, 890,000, 900,000. The azure dragon roared. It was now 90% awake, and a shocking aura emanated out from the 8th level. It almost seemed to be pleading with Meng Hao to complete the final 100,000 deconstructions so that it could be free to fly among the heavens. A tense silence reigned outside of the medicine pavilion as all eyes focused on the numbers on the stone stele. It was as if everyone was waiting for that number to reach 1 million. Meng Hao suddenly looked up. The level of difficulty here was incredible, and his eyes were completely bloodshot. When it came to these final 100,000 medicinal plants, each one of them was made up of dozens and even hundreds of other medicinal plants. He took a deep breath, and within him, his immortal meridians exploded with power, fortifying his mental constitution. An intense immortal will caused his immortal chi to swirl, and his eyes glittered as if with starlight as he continued onward. Are you UMMMBLLLE? 91,000, 92,000, 93,000, 97,000, 98,000, 99,000. Countless medicinal plants appeared in front of him, all of which he separated from the dragon. He lost track of time, and it almost seemed like the medicinal plants would never end. But then, all of a sudden, there were none. Meng Hao stopped in place. 1 million. When he finished the 1 millionth medicinal plant, massive roaring filled the 8th level. The entire medicine pavilion emanated azure light as the illusory image of an azure dragon roared a shocking roar. The members of the Fang clan who were watching outside the medicine pavilion were thrown into tumult. 1 million. The crown prince reached 1 million on the 8th level. This is unheard of. No one has ever done that in the history of the Tao of Alchemy division. The crown prince is a chosen in cultivation and a blazing sun in the Tao of Alchemy. Chapter 10-12, Opening the Essence Door. On that day, virtually every member of the Fang clan saw an azure dragon fly out of the medicine pavilion in the Tao of Alchemy division, then speed around planet East Victory before eventually fading away. As it vanished, motes of green light sprinkled down onto the lands of planet East Victory, causing the entire planet to thrum with life force. This scene caused the hearts of all the cultivators on planet East Victory to tremble with shock. In the medicine immortal sect, Fang Yangsu saw what was happening, and his expression flickered with astonishment. He gazed in the direction of the Tao of Alchemy division and murmured after a long time, "So the legends about the 8th level are true." The first alchemist to completely unseal the azure dragon of plants and vegetation will free the dragon and enable it to nourish the lands. Meng Hao's skill in the Tao of Alchemy has reached an incredible level. Fang Xiaodou took a deep breath. His eyes were wide as he watched the azure dragon fade away and the nourishing motes of light fall down onto the planet. He even reached his hand out and allowed one of the glimmering lights to land onto his palm. Simultaneously, the Tao bell appeared in midair over the ancestral mansion. Its toll echoed out into the hearts of all the members of the Fang clan. Then the hubbub of conversation broke out in all areas of the Fang clan. After experiencing the rebellion, the Fang clan needed a joyous occasion like this to consolidate the clan and help them grow stronger. On the 8th level of the medicine pavilion, Meng Hao watched as the unsealed azure dragon swirled around and then flew away. Next, the plants and vegetation disappeared into the numerous glittering screens which had just appeared. Meng Hao did not immediately proceed to the next level. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, mentally reviewing the 1 million medicinal plants he had just seen and committing them to memory. After quite a bit of time passed, he opened his eyes, within which glowed an intense light. Having completed the 8th level perfectly, he looked off into the distance at a door which had appeared. There was no staircase, only a door, and that door led to the 9th level. The final level. The Fang Clan's Medicine Pavilion is truly a place where good fortune can be wrested away from heaven and earth. The transformations of plants and vegetation here have reached the pinnacle, especially on the 8th level. Well, I wonder what kind of test I'll find on the 9th level. He looked curiously at the door for a while before finally rising to his feet and walking over. Eventually, he came to stand directly in front of it. Eyes glittering, he pushed it open and walked in without hesitation. This was the final level of the Medicine Pavilion. As soon as he entered, he stopped in his tracks and stared around in shock. An entire world stretched out in front of his eyes. The sky was deep blue, and a golden sun hung in the sky, sending out radiant sunlight. Gigantic birds flew about in the sky. Off in the distance, the ground shook under the feet of a giant, which roared as it ran. Everything bore the appearance of ancient times. There was one particular plant, a small one that was growing out from under a rock. It seemed ordinary and not even worth mentioning, but if you looked closely, it appeared as if, at some point in the past, the rock had crushed the plant. However, the plant had fought on, eventually pushing the rock aside and growing up from under its edges. Meng Hao was a bit taken aback by everything. However, after only a few breaths of time passed, everything blurred. When things became clear again, he was standing in the same place he had been before. However, the mountains and lands around him had crumbled, even that rock. The little plant he had seen had also collapsed into pieces. Yet one of those plant pieces managed to fly up into the air and merge with some of the remnants of the shattered rock, which then spun off into the distance, where they landed in the middle of a pool of water and sank to the bottom. Time passed, years flew by, and it was impossible to tell how many. Gradually, another small plant grew up from within the pool of water. It looked different than the previous plant, sturdier and more resilient. Meng Hao frowned. He wasn't sure exactly what he was seeing, nor what it had to do with this 9th level. He continued to watch as time flashed by. Suns rose and set. The plant would wither, then grow again, a seemingly endless cycle. Finally, one day, the lands were destroyed in a seismic event, and the area where the plant was growing turned into a seafloor. Soil became sludge, completely burying the tiny plant. More time passed. The little plant once again grew up from within the sludge. It looked different than before, as if it were some type of seaweed. It looked almost like hair as it grew longer and longer. Later, the sea dried up, and the plant withered and eventually disappeared. Then, a tree grew up in its place. That tree became a forest, within which was a tree that seemed to be the same tiny plant from years ago. Time flowed. Meng Hao watched as the huge tree eventually began to grow smaller. The other trees around it withered in death, but it grew stronger and stronger until, eventually, it attracted the attention of lightning. The lightning struck it and it dried up. In the moment that it died, a sprout appeared, which became the only green thing in the whole world, growing up out of the dead husk of the tree. Meng Hao stared at the sprout in shock. A powerful aura gradually began to emanate from the sprout, and after much time passed, a hand appeared in the void, which slowly reached out and harvested the tiny sprout. Sure enough, it became a wholly medicinal plant, said an ancient voice, the same voice that had spoken on the previous levels of the Medicine Pavilion. The images Meng Hao was seeing crumbled away. He breathed heavily as everything faded away, and he found himself standing in a medicinal plant garden, within which grew a single medicinal plant. It was a tiny sprout, the same one whose leaves Meng Hao had seen passing by in his vision. He stared at the sprout in shock, and a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. "Do you understand?" asked the voice. "What is the highest realm of plants and vegetation? No one can truly answer this question. Everyone has their own explanation. A tiny plant from the ancient age that experienced all sorts of good fortune. Who can say whether or not that plant will become some sort of shocking holy medicinal plant? All living things are mundane, and yet all living things can also be extraordinary. Cultivators practice cultivation because of their desire to shed the limitations of the mortal world. They wish to be like the carp that leapt over the dragon gate. Plants and vegetation are similar. When concocting them into medicinal pills and consuming them, one should not solely focus on strengthening themselves, but should also strive to sense the plant's fundamental will. It might seem like the plant dies in the process of becoming a pill, but who can truly say whether or not this is just a rebirth into another stage of life for them? As the ancient voice echoed out, Meng Hao sat down cross-legged and looked at the tiny sprout. All of a sudden, he thought about the image of the first-generation patriarch incarnated as a planet. He became a planet, from which grew countless types of plants and vegetation. This, Meng Hao murmured. He felt as if he were just on the verge of grasping something profound, but he wasn't able to put it into words. It was as if countless threads were swirling around in his head, making it impossible to find the correct train of thought. Reincarnation, he said, looking up. Almost as soon as the word left his mouth, the entire world collapsed. The fragments then formed back together, causing another shocking vision to appear. The vision was exactly the same as what he had experienced when he first set foot into the 9th level. He saw the world of ancient times, and he saw the tiny plant growing up from under the rock. The vision appeared to be identical, except that this time, the hand was present, as if he was now seeing the true beginning to the story. A voice echoed out within the vision. Stuck under a boulder, but you still want to live and grow. Well then, allow me to give you a chance at life. The hand then tapped the plant lightly. The little plant swayed, then returned to normal. The hand vanished as if it had never existed in the first place. The vision faded away, and the void of the 9th level appeared again. The ancient voice echoed out again. It's not just reincarnation but creation. From my perspective, the pinnacle of plants and vegetation is actually creation. After the voice finished speaking, a door appeared next to Meng Hao, a door which led to the outside. Meng Hao maintained his silence. The little plant had been ordinary, but because it had been tapped by that finger, its entire life and fate changed. In the end, the lightning struck it, and it became a wholly medicinal plant. That definitely was a kind of creation. After a long time, Meng Hao rose to his feet, clasped hands, and bowed deeply. Suddenly, the ancient voice spoke again. If you had the choice, would you wish to become that little plant, or would you want to become the hand? Meng Hao paused and looked out into the void. Voice calm, he replied, neither that plant nor that hand can act of their own accord. Both are controlled by something else. I would want to become the person who commanded that hand to alter the little plant. With that, he turned and prepared to step through the door. Suddenly, the ancient voice in the void laughed. It was a laughter filled with happiness and praise. To think that the Fang clan has produced someone like you. Delightful, how very delightful. As the voice echoed out, the image of a middle-aged man suddenly appeared within the void. He looked over at Meng Hao. For years, none of the few people who managed to enter this place made a choice like yours. Your reward for reaching this 9th level is that I can answer a single question for you. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. Is there a pinnacle of skill with plants and vegetation that exceeds that of creation? He asked. That's not an easy question to answer, the middle-aged man said slowly. First, you must be able to understand what the Tao is. The Tao, Meng Hao gaped. Why is there life? Why is there death? The ancient voice echoed back and forth endlessly. Why is there reincarnation? It's like a circle, with the head and the tail connected, but what exactly does that mean? And is reincarnation the only explanation? Why are there cultivators? Why are there cultivation realms? Why is there Taoist magic? Why are there divine abilities? How does light shine? How does darkness descend? Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. What are the differences between these elements? Fire is fire, and yet, why are there different types of heat? What is heat? What is cold? What does it mean when something that can only survive in the ice can be burned to death by a single drop of water? The ancient voice spoke with increasing speed, causing Meng Hao's mind to tremble. Questions piled up in his mind. Each one seemed possible to answer directly, but if he actually had to answer them, he would be left speechless. What is the Tao? That was the final question uttered by the ancient voice, and it left Meng Hao's mind rumbling. The essence is the Tao, the basis of everything that defies heaven. A bright light shone in the middle-aged man's eyes, and he suddenly seemed very serious. All such unknowns are essence. Only when you seek out the essence can you comprehend heaven and earth, understand all living things, and control everything. When you understand all transformations of heaven and earth, when you have defied the heavens, when you have sealed the earth, then what could possibly be difficult to you? The middle-aged man waved his hand, and Meng Hao's mind trembled. He couldn't stop himself from stepping into the door, and then he vanished into the void. After he disappeared, the middle-aged man shook his head and smiled, then stepped forward into the medicinal plant garden. He sat down cross-legged and gradually transformed into a tiny sprout. He was the final transformation of that little plant, a tiny sprout. Chapter 10:13, planning to escape the marriage. I look forward to the day when he becomes the person who controls that hand. The sprout swayed back and forth, and faint laughter could be heard echoing out into the darkness of the void. The option of becoming the plant or the hand seemed like a choice, but it was actually a trick question. Although there appeared to be two answers to pick from, in reality, those two answers were one and the same. That was especially true after one's mind was reeling after experiencing the shocking visions. Before that feeling even faded away, when one had not had a chance to digest the experience, and the heart was still unstable, whatever decision was made would clearly reveal the nature of one's Tao and the focus of one's heart. It was not a time in which random or careless things could be said. If one responded in an absurd way that did not correspond to the object of their obsession, it would be like a betrayal of oneself and result in the collapse of their Tao will. Therefore, for someone to escape the trap and to respond that they wanted to become the person who controlled the hand was something completely remarkable. Any person who entered the 9th level of the medicine pavilion and faced that middle-aged man's divine ability, and who had a cultivation base lower than him, would be incapable of speaking lies. The only thing they would be capable of doing was speaking the truth from the bottom of their heart. That was the only way to pass the 9th level. It required not only utter self-confidence, but also total clarity of self. Furthermore, it required those who answered the question to have an unshakable belief in their own Tao. That middle-aged man had not seen a member of the Fang clan like that in a long time. Therefore, he decided to provide some enlightenment regarding the Tao of Essence. Essence is the Tao, thought Meng Hao. His mind rumbled as he stepped out of the door. In the blink of an eye, he was outside of the medicine pavilion, surrounded by tens of thousands of clan members, all of whom were looking at Meng Hao, their faces filled with excitement. The toll of the Tao bell could be heard, filling the minds of all members of the Fang clan. Behind Meng Hao, brilliant light shot up from the medicine pavilion to illuminate everything. All of the alchemists on planet East Victory clasped hands and bowed toward Meng Hao. The sky went dark. That was the first time that anyone had perfectly passed through the entire medicine pavilion. It would definitely become a legend in the Tao of Alchemy division, part of the mythos of the Fang clan's Tao of Alchemy. Meng Hao's name was now listed in the very first position on the stone stele outside of the medicine pavilion. However, all of the cheering barely registered in his ears. The words he had just heard filled his ears and continued to crash around in his mind like thunder. Essence is the Tao, he murmured. Comprehend essence, and you can step into the Tao realm. It was as if Meng Hao's mind had been opened further, making his understanding of cultivation clearer than ever. Use the nirvana fruits to enter the ancient realm. Use essence to form the Tao realm. Meng Hao's eyes shone with brilliant light as the ancient voice slowly echoed away into silence. Outside of the medicine pavilion, the cries of the clan members gradually grew stronger in Meng Hao's ears. Congratulations on charging through the whole medicine pavilion, Crown Prince. Congratulations, Crown Prince. As the cries echoed out, Meng Hao gradually recovered his senses. Soon he was staring around in shock. Something seemed off. There didn't seem to be enough people in the area. There were tens of thousands and no more. From what he could remember when he entered the medicine pavilion, there had been hundreds of thousands, perhaps even more, spread about in all directions. Feeling suspicious, Meng Hao smiled at the crowds, clasped hands, and bowed. Then he gave Fang Zai a meaningful look and sped off into the distance. Fang Zai followed nervously. The two of them flew out of the Tao of Alchemy division, and before Meng Hao could even ask him any questions, Fang Zai sighed. "Cause, something happened. After you entered the medicine pavilion, the clan suddenly announced a bunch of important missions. Almost all of the clan members who came to watch immediately had to go back to the clan." Smiling wryly, Fang Zai produced a bag of holding which he handed over to Meng Hao. Face unsightly, Meng Hao grabbed the bag of holding and scanned it. There were quite a few spirit stones inside, but it was a lot less than he had expected. It didn't take much thought to come to the conclusion that this was definitely a counterstrike from that old fox Fang Shadow. He turned to stare angrily at the ancestral mansion. "That old hoodlum," Meng Hao growled, gnashing his teeth, "that wily old fox." Obviously, the old fogey had figured out that he was being conned by Meng Hao, and had devised an ingenious counterattack. "Well, it doesn't matter," said Meng Hao, forcing a smile onto his face as he clapped Fang Zai on the shoulder. "You head back now, and I'll start working on another plan." Fang Zai nodded. After bowing to Meng Hao, he transformed into a colorful beam of light that shot off into the distance. Meng Hao hovered in midair, eyes flickering, jaw clenched. Since you want to force my hand so badly, you old fox, he thought, don't blame the young master for flipping over the game board. Musing about how the first-generation patriarch had stared down Jai, he turned into a prismatic beam that shot back toward the ancestral mansion. Back in his residence, he sat down cross-legged. After a few days passed, in the dead of night, he flickered and disappeared from within his residence and materialized outside of the ancestral mansion, where he transformed into a beam of light that shot soundlessly up into the sky. Just when he seemed to be on the verge of bursting out into the starry sky, a powerful force bore down on him. It was like a sealing power which spread out in all directions, forcing him to come to a stop. All he could do now was look out at the starry sky, his expression unsightly. So the old fox already prepared for the possibility of me fleeing before the wedding day. From the look of things, the old fogey intentionally asked the three great Taoist societies to wait for 3 months before coming back for me. It was all a setup. He gritted his teeth as put all the pieces of the puzzle together. He was not happy to have been conned multiple times by Fang Xiaodao. It was the feeling of being defeated by someone else in the field which you considered yourself to be most skilled at. Meng Hao snorted coldly and his eyes glittered. Deep inside, he was actually laughing as he turned and headed back to the clan. He settled down in the ancestral mansion and made no further attempts to escape the marriage. Nor did he go to concoct medicinal pills. Instead, he spent all of his time poring through the clan's ancient records and reading through its history. Fang Xiaodao was puzzled by this behavior. During recent days, he had been constantly observing Meng Hao with divine sense. He even saw him attempt to fly away, the result of which left him feeling very pleased. But now he couldn't figure him out. I can't underestimate this fox cub, he thought. If I overlook the tiniest thing, I could end up falling into his con. Fang Xiaodao wore a very serious expression. He attempted to study the same ancient records that Meng Hao had looked at. However, he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, which only served to increase his caution. An entire month passed in this fashion. Fang Xiaodao was starting to get a very bad feeling. However, no matter how much thought he put into it, he couldn't put his finger on what exactly the problem was. Currently, Meng Hao sat cross-legged in his residence. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open and they were shot with blood. His complexion was a bit wan as well. However, inside, he was laughing coldly. "That's it, I've figured it out," he murmured to himself. During divine soul nourishment, all of planet East Victory will be covered by ripples that block Tao realm divine sense for 1 breath of time. It is also during divine soul nourishment that the one-thought stellar transformation can be used to perform a stellar teleportation. Therefore, now is the time to concoct some pills. His eyes glittered for a moment before he closed them. The next morning at dawn, he rose to his feet and then shot toward the Tao of Alchemy division in a beam of light. For the entire past month, Fang Xiaodao had been completely on edge. He knew that something was going on with Meng Hao, so as soon as he saw him fly out of his residence, he focused all of his divine sense on him. When he saw that he was heading toward the Tao of Alchemy division, he breathed a sigh of relief. HMPH, what scares me is not you making your move, fox cub. What makes me nervous is when you do nothing, making it impossible to pick up on any clues. You're just too immature. A wide smile appeared on Fang Xiaodao's face. He was clearly very pleased with himself. "So it turns out he's heading to the pill pavilion," he said to himself. His eyes flashed. He was actually in fear of Meng Hao's Tao of Alchemy. However, Fang Yangsu had told him that other than the first-generation patriarch, no one had ever been able to concoct the 3rd medicinal pill. Therefore, he wasn't too worried. According to Fang Yangsu, the little hoodlum isn't qualified to concoct the 2nd medicinal pill. Of course, it would all depend on his enlightenment regarding certain fundamentals, an enlightenment that no one in the immortal realm could possibly achieve. Only those on the threshold of the Tao realm could achieve it. Considering that, it seems that he simply has no way of concocting the 2nd medicinal pill. Fang Xiaodao coughed dryly. In truth, the matter of the marriage between Meng Hao and Li Linger had really gotten him worried lately. Well, there's nothing to be done. I'm his grandfather's grandfather, and I love him more than anyone else in the clan. If I don't worry about his future, then who will, right? Fang Xiaodao sighed to himself, then blinked an eye to send some more divine sense out toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao flew through the Tao of Alchemy division, causing rumbling sounds to echo out. After a month being away, it was his grand return. As various clan members caught sight of him, they began to speculate about what exactly he was doing. Then, people began to realize that he was heading toward the pill pavilion, and excitement began to build. Could it be that, after charging through all of the medicine pavilion, the Crown Prince is now going to challenge the pill pavilion? The Crown Prince was already able to concoct one of the three great medicinal pills, the shameless sunspirit pill. Could it be that he's going to try to concoct the other two pills? Even as they made their speculations, they flew into the air to follow Meng Hao. It didn't take long before the entire Tao of Alchemy division was astir. As for Meng Hao, he shot through the air at top speed, making no attempt to conceal his actions as he whistled toward the pill pavilion. Soon, he was standing directly outside of it, surrounded by clusters of curious clan members. What they saw was Meng Hao unhesitatingly approach the second drum, raise his fist, and strike the drum's surface. A sonorous boom resonated out, causing everything to shake. The entire Tao of Alchemy division trembled, and even the ancestral mansion reverberated with the sound. The Crown Prince really is going to try to concoct one of those legendary medicinal pills. He already concocted the shameless sunspirit pill. Now he's going to try to make a sea-cleaving, heaven-defying pill. The sound of the drum echoed out in all directions, causing even more clan members to approach. This was not like the medicine pavilion, where people couldn't see inside. Anyone could bear witness to the concocting of the legendary medicinal pills. Meng Hao stood outside the pill pavilion, hands still clenched into a fist. It was at this point that the list of rewards for concocting the medicinal pill appeared in front of him. Sea-cleaving, heaven-defying pill. Whoever concocts this pill will receive a reward of 1 billion spirit stones, 1 million immortal jades, 20 million merit points, 100,000 medicinal plants of your choice from the Tao of Alchemy division, 6 clan Taoist magics, and 1 ancient treasure. The Tao bell will toll 18 times. The ingredient fee is 10 million merit points for 1 set. In the blink of an eye, Meng Hao's clan merit points were reduced by 10 million. A jade slip then appeared in front of him. At the same time, a vast collection of medicinal plants appeared, which floated around him in the air. In total, there were 99 different plants. Meng Hao raised his hand to take the jade slip. After scanning it with divine sense, he could see the method for how to concoct one of the Fang clan's 3 great medicinal pills, the second pill, sea-cleaving, heaven-defying pill. After glancing at the formula, Meng Hao's eyes narrowed, and he understood why it was so difficult to concoct the pill, and why nobody from the Tao of Alchemy division had successfully done so over the years. The difficulty in concocting this pill comes from the grafts that are involved. There is no grafting technique, only a rough pill formula. Furthermore, the pill formula doesn't even list the names of the plants and vegetation involved. All it does is list the degree to which certain characteristics are required of the plants. You need to use these 99 medicinal plants to graft 100,000 different plants that all harmonize with each other. That is the first step, sea-cleaving. As for the heaven-defying part of the pill, it seems so profound. How do you concoct that portion? After a moment of silence, Meng Hao's eyes flickered with a bright glow, and he thought back to what the middle-aged man had said on the 9th level of the medicine pavilion. The essence is the Tao, the basis of everything that defies heaven. I understand now. This medicinal pill is difficult to concoct because it requires essence. That's why Pill Elder couldn't concoct it, and yet Fang Yangsu from the Medicine Immortal sect could. Meng Hao felt as if his mind were being struck by lightning. Then everything became clear. Essence? Well, I have that too. It was at this point that his terrifying divine flame immortal meridian roared to life inside of him. His cultivation base surged, and massive pressure rolled out. The surrounding clan members were shocked to discover that essence ripples were pouring out of Meng Hao. They might be weak, and as vastly separated from the power of the Tao realm as Earth is from heaven. However, it was definitely essence power. It wasn't enough power for Meng Hao to reach the Tao realm, but if all he was doing was concocting pills, it's enough. A smile broke out on Meng Hao's face as he waved his right hand, causing all 99 medicinal plants to fly toward him. Then, they blurred as he began to graft them together at high speed. Urgen included a note at the end of this chapter commenting on how it was longer than usual. His chapters are usually 3,000 Chinese characters, which usually works out to around 2,200 English words. This chapter was 3,500 characters and around 2,600 words. Chapter 10-14, Sea-Cleaving Heaven-Defying Pill. Almost in the same moment that Meng Hao's divine flame immortal meridian exploded with power, Fang Yangsu sat in the medicine immortal sect, and his face suddenly flickered. He rose to his feet, vanished, and reappeared next to Fang Xiaodao in the ancestral mansion. "That little punk actually does understand the threshold of the Tao realm," he said. "He's figured it out too early. Without sufficient wisdom, it's not a good thing." When Fang Xiaodao heard this, he stared in shock. "You mean?" Fang Yangsu looked over at Fang Xiaodao and then coolly said, "I mean that he can concoct the sea-cleaving, heaven-defying pill after all." Fang Xiaodao's expression flickered, and then he frowned. "Why do you have to make things so hard on him?" said Fang Yangsu, shaking his head. "Loving memories are what makes our journey along the path of cultivation beautiful." "The Li clan was an auxiliary branch of Lord Li's clan," replied Fang Xiaodao, "and the reason why the Jai clan has no choice but to leave them be is that, just like the Wang clan, the Li clan did not originate in the Ninth Mountain and Sea. The benefit to the clan as a whole is secondary when it comes to forming a marriage alliance with the Li clan. The most important thing about it is for Hayar himself. Once he steps into the Tao realm, being in that marriage would provide him with unexpected benefits. He is now the only hope of my bloodline. How could I possibly allow him to fool around willy-nilly?" Fang Xiaodao sighed and then made a grasping motion, causing a jade slip to appear in his hand. "If Hayar gets angry, then I'll just have to bear the brunt of that anger," he concluded. Eyes filled with determination, he sent some divine will into the jade slip. Back in the Tao of Alchemy division, everyone watched as Meng Hao stood in front of the pill pavilion's second drum, hair and robes whipping about. He swished his sleeve, and the medicinal plants flying about him blurred as he rapidly grafted them. He was to use 99 medicinal plants to graft 100,000 variations. That was the first step to concocting the sea-cleaving, heaven-defying pill. An expression of concentration could be seen on his face, and his eyes flickered with the glow of augury. More and more medicinal plants appeared around him. 3,000, 7,000, 10,000. That wasn't the end. Meng Hao lifted his hand and waved a finger, causing all of the medicinal plants to split apart as he started new grafts. In accordance with the pill formula's requirements, he continued to create more and more medicinal plants that all harmonized with each other. Doing something like this required incredible skill with plants and vegetation, skill that could only be described as terrifying. It was something that, in the entire Tao of Alchemy division, only Pill Elder could also do. No one else in the Tao of Alchemy division could come close, the reason being that such a level of skill with plants and vegetation required that someone pass the 8th level of the medicine pavilion by ungrafting at least 500,000 medicinal plants. Even in the medicine immortal sect, only Fang Yangsu was qualified to do such a thing. Time passed. Meng Hao's hand was in constant motion as more and more grafted medicinal plants appeared around him. 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. It was a dazzling sight, and all of the surrounding members of the Fang clan were shaken inwardly. They had never seen someone concoct pills in such a way. To them, this was not a matter of simply concocting pills. This was a Tao. The Tao of Alchemy. The alchemists were all moved, and Pill Elder stood on his mountain peak, watching intently. 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. Meng Hao's hands moved faster and faster, and the flash of augury sparkled in his eyes. All of his attention was focused on deconstructing, then grafting medicinal plants. Boundless light rose up, and only continued to grow brighter and brighter. An intense aroma of medicinal plants and vegetation wafted about. It grew stronger and stronger until it filled the entire Tao of Alchemy division. All of the cultivators who caught a whiff felt enlivened. Time passed by slowly. Soon, a day had gone by, and Meng Hao was still deconstructing medicinal plants. During the process, he couldn't make a single mistake. If he did, if he missed out on a single characteristic of a single plant, it would influence the deconstruction of all the other plants and vegetation. 80,000, 90,000 on the second day, Meng Hao's hands suddenly stopped moving. Shockingly, he was now surrounded by 100,000 medicinal plants. From 99 plants, he had deconstructed and grafted 100,000 new, unique medicinal plants. The surrounding members of the Fang clan, including the alchemists from the Tao of Alchemy division, were in shock. What they had seen was like something out of a legend. It was like observing a Tao, a type of pill concocting in which refuse was turned into a divine item. However, nobody spoke. They only looked on, panting. Interrupting someone who was concocting pills was the highest taboo, and considering that Meng Hao was now immersed in the Tao of Alchemy, the members of the Fang clan maintained complete silence. They didn't want to disturb him. However, their eyes were filled with excitement and approval that bordered on madness. Meng Hao closed his eyes, then opened them a few moments later. A brilliant gleam could be seen as he extended his hands and pinched down with his fingers. "See," he barked. As soon as the word left his mouth, the 100,000 medicinal plants which surrounded him all collapsed into pieces. All of the leaves and branches shattered into dust as if being squeezed dry and dying. The sight of it caused everyone to gasp. However, the cultivators with strong skill in the Tao of alchemy were instantly astonished. A wind picked up, gathering up the dust that was the remnants of the 100,000 medicinal plants, leaving behind. Something formed from the sap of 100,000 plants, an emerald sea. The green sea surrounded Meng Hao and pulsed as if with waves, sending tremors out in all directions. It almost looked like real seawater, and although it wasn't a boundless expanse, it was truly a sea. The sea of plants and vegetation rotated ceaselessly around Meng Hao as he extended both hands and then violently shoved them downward. Congeal. Rumbling filled the air as the sea of plants and vegetation began to boil, then condense inward. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into an enormous ball of sap in front of Meng Hao. Almost in that same moment, Meng Hao's immortal meridians exploded with power. 33 heavens appeared, and the secret magic of the immortal realm paragon was unleashed. Instantly, all of his immortal meridians transformed into divine flame immortal meridians. 123 divine flame immortal meridians surged with power, causing 123 beams of glowing divine flame light to shoot toward the sphere of sap. They merged into each other, and essence power emanated off of Meng Hao. His entire body trembled, and beads of sweat broke out on his face. His eyes gleamed with determination as he reached out and manipulated the sphere of sap with both hands. It began to boil madly. Bulges and depressions rose and fell on its surface, and numerous magical symbols flickered. It was almost as if there were some earth-shaking, heaven-shattering power inside of it. It seemed like it might explode at any moment, but Meng Hao was constantly suppressing it. Rumbling sounds echoed out from inside of the sphere of sap, which was now the complete focus of all attention. The sphere grew smaller and smaller as Meng Hao suppressed it, until finally it was the size of a fist. Unable to push the sap down any further, Meng Hao cried out, "Sea cleaving." An incredible force burst out from within the sphere, causing his hands to recoil. Blood oozed out of the corners of his mouth and he backed up. At the same time, the fist-sized sphere of sap directly exploded. A huge boom echoed out in all directions as endless amounts of sap splashed out in all directions. It was as if the entire sky was suddenly stained the green color of plants and vegetation. Did he fail? That was the question floating in the minds of all the onlookers. Heaven-defying, Meng Hao threw his head back and roared, unleashing the full explosive power of his divine flame immortal meridian. The splatters of sap suddenly stopped in place, then began to move in reverse. In the blink of an eye, all of the sap had returned and reformed in front of Meng Hao. This sight caused the minds of all onlookers to reel. They had clearly seen the sky stained green when the sap exploded, but now there was a defiant reversal. The heavens changed color again as the sap completely went in reverse. Shockingly, the sap congealed together, becoming a green medicinal pill which floated in front of Meng Hao. The powerful, intense medicinal aroma exploded out, filling the entire Tao of Alchemy division, reaching the Fang clan ancestral mansion, and spreading out across roughly half of Planet East Victory. Planet East Victory was completely shaken. If that were all there were to it, it wouldn't be enough to see how valuable the pill was. However, in the exact moment that the sea-cleaving, heaven-defying pill appeared, all of a sudden, shocking winds swept out through the sky above Planet East Victory as countless tribulation clouds appeared. This was not true immortal tribulation, but rather pill tribulation. From ancient times until now, whenever shocking pills appeared, it would stimulate the power of heaven and earth and cause pill tribulation to appear, to attempt to eradicate the pill. The scene caused shock to rise up in the hearts of the members of the Fang clan. Fang Danyun's eyes glowed brightly, and Fang Yangsu was clearly moved. The pill tribulation formed in the blink of an eye, creating boundless tribulation clouds that caused all of Planet East Victory to tremble. The cultivators were shaken as they watched a lightning bolt descend from the rolling clouds. "Trifling pill tribulation," said Meng Hao, his expression indifferent. He had transcended immortal tribulation, so to him, pill tribulation wasn't even worth glancing at. Even as the lightning bolt descended, Meng Hao extended his hand. All 123 immortal meridians then transformed into the blood demon grand magic. 123 blood demon heads charged up. The entire sky turned bright red as the blood demon heads fused together, becoming a gigantic 3,000-meter head with a horn sticking out of its forehead. The massive head surged toward the lightning bolt. A huge boom echoed out. Everyone was astonished to see the lightning bolt collapse into pieces, completely incapable of doing anything to the blood demon head. After that, the head continued onward, whistling through the air toward the tribulation clouds. The tribulation clouds were destroyed. When that happened, the sea-cleaving heaven-defying pill in front of Meng Hao burst out with brilliant light that shot up into the sky. Simultaneously, the Tao bell appeared in midair above the ancestral mansion and began to toll, shaking everything. It was not one toll or two, but rather 2 sets of 9 tolls each. In total, 18 tolls rang out into the minds of the members of the Fang clan, leaving them completely shaken. For years and years, the Tao bell had never tolled so many times. The result was that everyone in the whole Fang clan was left completely flabbergasted. Meng Hao stood outside the pill pavilion, his hair whipping about, his eyes shining brightly. The surrounding cultivators and alchemists of the Fang clan had looks of unprecedentedly wild reverence on their faces as they clasped hands and bowed deeply. When they straightened up, they found that Meng Hao had not left the pill pavilion. Instead, he had walked forward, toward the third drum. Chapter 10:15, Heavenly One Thought. The members of the Fang clan had suppressed their comments for too long, and now everything erupted. The Crown Prince, he's going to concoct the Heavenly One Thought pill. The Crown Prince already concocted the Skypalist Sunspirit pill and the Sea-Cleaving Heaven-Defying pill. But the Heavenly One Thought pill is the #1 pill of the Fang clan. Nobody can concoct it. The entire Tao of Alchemy division was boiling. Fang Yangsu's eyes glowed brightly with anticipation as he looked at Meng Hao. Although he didn't believe that Meng Hao would actually succeed, he wanted to see for himself whether a miracle would occur. As for the methods Fang Xiaodao was using to make things hard for Meng Hao, Fang Yangsu didn't approve. When it came to making choices between love and opportunity, some people would pick the former, others the latter, and he didn't feel it was right to interfere with such a decision. Forcing your own choices onto others was fundamentally wrong. However, he wasn't in a position to say anything about it. After all, Meng Hao was of the same bloodline as Fang Xiaodao, and he was not. Fang Xiaodao was frowning. He was certain that Meng Hao would be incapable of concocting the Heavenly One Thought pill. Furthermore, even if some heaven-defying event occurred, he had already reduced the prizes so that Meng Hao couldn't make enough to win the bet. And yet, for some reason, he had the feeling that he had overlooked something. Unfortunately, no matter how he reviewed all the details, he couldn't pick up any clues about what it might be. The little hoodlum is far too crafty, thought Fang Xiaodao, smiling slightly. I have to be on guard. Although, regardless of whether he succeeds or not, he still has to pay 100 million merit points. Back in the mountains of the Tao of Alchemy division, atop the pill pavilion, Meng Hao actually wasn't even thinking about the reward for concocting the sea-cleaving heaven-defying pill. He was sure that Fang Xiaodao would have come up with a reason to reduce the reward to ensure that he wouldn't be able to come up with all the spirit stones he needed within the time limit. Since that was the case, Meng Hao decided that he might as well make a big show of things. By striking the third drum, it indicated that he would be attempting to do something that nobody in the Fang clan other than the first-generation patriarch had ever done. He would concoct the pill nobody had ever concocted, the Heavenly One Thought pill. Neither Fang Danyun, nor Fang Yangsu, nor anyone throughout all the years, had ever successfully concocted the clan's legendary Heavenly One Thought pill. When Meng Hao came to a stop in front of the third drum and turned his head to look around, he saw the members of the Fang clan tightly packed in all directions, staring at him. Their eyes gleamed with passionate fervor. Meng Hao took a deep breath. Expression somber, he clasped hands and then bowed to all of his fellow clan members. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow clan members, I wish to concoct the Heavenly One Thought pill. Unfortunately, this pill requires 100 million merit points. Right now, I don't have enough merit points. Therefore, I would like to request that all of you give me some of your merit points so that I can concoct the pill. The pill that no one other than the first-generation patriarch has ever been able to concoct. The Heavenly One Thought pill. Meng Hao's voice echoed out in all directions. If he had said something like this before concocting the sea-cleaving heaven-defying pill, very few clan members would have been willing to give him clan merit points. But now, after having just recently charged through the medicine pavilion, and then concocting the sea-cleaving heaven-defying pill, he had long since built his momentum up to a peak. That was especially true after putting his Tao of alchemy on display by concocting the sea-cleaving heaven-defying pill. To everyone who was watching, he was like something out of a legend. Therefore, when he spoke his words, none of the surrounding clan members refused. In fact, they were all very excited to deliver their merit points to him. They wanted to witness something that had never happened in the history of the clan. They wanted to see whether or not Meng Hao would actually be able to concoct the Heavenly One thought pill. Crown Prince, there's no need to be so polite. I'm more than happy to give you a few trifling merit points. I don't have much, Crown Prince, only 1,000, but you can have all of them to concoct that pill. Voices rang out in all directions. Varying amounts of merit points were transferred to Meng Hao's Jade slip, causing the balance to rise rapidly. It didn't take long for there to be more than 10 million. Only when the number reached 30 million did it begin to slow down. Yet, there was still far too big a gap before he got as many as he needed. It was at this point that virtually all of the alchemists from the Tao of Alchemy division stepped forward and began to give merit points to Meng Hao. We're all alchemists, and our greatest aspiration in life, other than creating our own unique and unmatched medicinal pill, is to be able to see our clan's legendary Heavenly One thought pill. We know that in our entire lifetime we will never be able to concoct this pill ourselves. Crown Prince, since you have a chance to succeed, then how could we hold back? Crown Prince, I beg of you, you must succeed. As the voices echoed out, rising and falling, Meng Hao's merit point balance exploded up. From 30 million, it almost instantly rose up to more than 80 million. Meng Hao's heart filled with warmth, and he clasped hands and bowed to everyone. However, his merit point balance still wasn't high enough. All of a sudden, laughter rang out from the centermost mountain deep in the Tao of Alchemy division. Then, Pill Elder Fang Danyun's voice could be heard. "Hey allow me to give you 20 million merit points." Fang Danyun waved his sleeve, and Meng Hao's merit points exploded up, rapidly reaching a total of 100 million. In that same moment, Fang Yangsu lowered his hand. He had also been planning to give Meng Hao some merit points. After all, they were all alchemists, and they all longed to see the Heavenly One thought pill. It was a desire that non-alchemists probably couldn't imagine or comprehend. Fang Xiaodou could only smile bitterly. He had never imagined that Meng Hao would be able to overcome the first major obstacle to concocting the Heavenly One thought pill so easily. After all, although their original agreement had precluded Meng Hao from borrowing spirit stones, it had said nothing about merit points. Meng Hao stood there outside the pill pavilion in the Tao of Alchemy division. He took a deep breath as he clasped hands and bowed deeply toward Fang Danyun's mountain peak. Then he turned, raised his hand, and struck the third drum. Boom! The sound rang out throughout the entire clan. Meng Hao's 100 million merit points vanished, and in front of him appeared the information about the Heavenly One thought pill. Heavenly One thought pill. Whoever concocts this pill will be the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy division. The prerequisite to attempt this pill is to concoct the previous 2 pills. The ingredient fee is 100 million merit points per set. Meng Hao's eyes shone with a strange light when saw the words Lord of the Tao of Alchemy division. That was the true reason why he was doing this. He wasn't interested in the position itself. Rather, he was interested in the bit of good fortune he would receive after becoming the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy division. That good fortune was something that most people didn't even know about. After all, from the time the first-generation patriarch passed away into meditation until now, there had never been a Lord of the Tao of Alchemy division. The good fortune he would acquire in that moment was something that had long since been omitted from what was taught in the clan about their history. However, after researching the ancient records, Meng Hao had found the solution to his problem. In addition to that, one of the reasons he was so confident that he could concoct the Heavenly One thought pill was because of information he had uncovered in the ancient records. There, it contained various journal entries made by certain clan members who had attempted to concoct the pill. From that information, he had gotten some clues. Those clues had spun round and round inside of Meng Hao's mind. During the month he had spent doing his research, they had eventually formed together into a very important idea. Heavenly One thought pill, he murmured. Perhaps I am the only person in the entire Fang clan who can actually concoct it. It was at that point that the twinkle of the starstone could be seen in his left eye. Time to carry out the plan. In the moment that his fist struck the surface of the third drum, a huge collection of medicinal plants appeared. There was also a pill formula, which Meng Hao grabbed and then began to study. Now he was even more certain. The Heavenly One Thought Pill requires divine sense that can stretch out into the starry sky. One must pluck down a shooting star, a stellar object, then use its power to catalyze the medicinal plants, refine them for at least a few thousand years. Only then can the pill be concocted. That medicinal pill is not meant to be consumed. Rather, it is an item used in cultivating the One Thought stellar transformation. The Heavenly One Thought Pill, actually the starstone in my left eye, is a Heavenly One Thought Pill. In truth, I cannot concoct the pill, not unless my cultivation base is at the same level as the first-generation patriarch, or perhaps if I had the assistance of someone in that realm. However, I already have a Heavenly One Thought Pill, therefore there isn't a need to actually concoct it. I can just put on a little show. That should do. His expression was the same as ever as he waved his right hand. Instantly, the medicinal plants all trembled as he began to graft them together. There were over 10,000 of them, and as they were grafted together, the aura of plants and vegetation rose up into the sky. Time passed, and more types of plants and vegetations appeared around Meng Hao. In the end, there were 1,000,000 medicinal plants swirling around him. They were packed tightly together, filling the sky, with Meng Hao at the center, completely surrounded. These were valuable medicinal plants, and Meng Hao would naturally not just waste them. Although he didn't intend to actually concoct a new Heavenly One Thought Pill, he did plan to further refine the one that was already in his left eye to ensure that it was truly branded as his own. Days passed. There seemed to be an endless amount of medicinal plants swirling around Meng Hao. Rumbling sounds filled the air as the plants then shattered, creating a sea of plants and vegetation. It shot toward Meng Hao, encircling him, wrapping him inside and preventing anyone in the outside world from seeing what was happening. It was at that point that the starstone emerged from Meng Hao's eye and floated in front of him, radiating scintillating starlight as it absorbed the sap from the medicinal plants. Then he performed a double-handed incantation gesture, causing the divine flame inside of him to explode out as he began a second refining of the pill. The divine flame caused the sap to boil. He performed another incantation gesture, further refining the sap until it turned into numerous magical symbols. Using the techniques of mutual augmentation and suppression, he caused the magical symbols to fuse into the starstone. The starstone gradually began to turn black, and then emanate powerful ripples which only continued to grow stronger and stronger. The ripples rapidly spread out into the Tao of Alchemy division, shocking all of the alchemists. They watched as the sap rapidly vanished. Brilliant light filled the air, shining out from the starstone that Meng Hao held in his palm. Colors flashed in the sky as if the heavens themselves were changing. Countless motes of starlight appeared up above, which were apparently reflections caused by the starstone. "This is the Heavenly One Thought Pill," shouted Meng Hao. His voice echoed out in all directions, causing widespread shock. Everyone was staring at the starstone. "That's the Heavenly One Thought Pill." Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to tell that Meng Hao was putting on a show and pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. But Fang Yangsu and Fang Xiaodao, as well as Fang Danyun, could all tell just by looking. Ah, so the Heavenly One Thought Pill cannot be concocted by someone who hasn't cultivated the One Thought stellar transformation. A tremor ran through Fang Yangsu as he suddenly understood everything. "So that's how it is," murmured Fang Danyun absent-mindedly. Fang Xiaodao stared with wide eyes. The little hoodlum cheated, he's cheating. Almost as soon as the words left his mouth, however, the Tao bell suddenly appeared in midair over the ancestral mansion. Its booming toll rang out in 3 sets of 9. That was a total of 27 tolls. Fang Xiaodao didn't approve, but the Fang clan's Tao bell did. According to it, Meng Hao had concocted the pill. In the moment that the Tao bell began to toll, a strange light began to glimmer in Meng Hao's eyes. He knew that it was time for the final step of his plan. It wouldn't be long before he could leave planet East Victory. The Tao bell began to toll 27 times, echoing out in the hearts and minds of all members of the Fang clan on planet East Victory. The fact that the bell tolled so many times caused everyone's hearts to fill with towering waves of shock. Skybalist Sunspirit Pill. See Cleaving Heaven Defying Pill. Heavenly One Thought Pill. For countless years, no one had ever been able to concoct all 3 of the Fang clan's legendary medicinal pills. However, on this day, Meng Hao did it in front of everyone, giving birth to what would eventually become a myth. He also became the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. 1. In past chapters I translated this as Lord of the Tao of Alchemy Division. Actually, Lord of the Tao of Alchemy is more accurate to the Chinese. In my opinion, the meaning of the title has to do with leadership of that part of the Fang clan, or mastery of the Fang clan Tao of Alchemy, or both. However, I don't think it's supposed to mean the Tao of Alchemy as in ultimate mastery of that Tao. I will go back later to adjust previous chapters. As the majestic sound of the toll rippled out into the ninth mountain and sea, an archaic voice spoke from the bell, and its words could be heard in the hearts of everyone in the Fang clan. All members of the Fang clan must bow to the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. That voice was the will of the Tao Bell, the highest form of testimony, which bore witness to the rise of the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. All of the alchemists in the Tao of Alchemy division emerged into the open. All of the apprentice alchemists neared. Even Fang Danian stepped off of his mountain peak, his expression extremely solemn. No matter what tier alchemist, everyone approached from all directions and congregated around the pill pavilion. All eyes were fixed upon Meng Hao, who stood there above the pill pavilion. Greetings, Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. It was hard to say who spoke the words first, but soon similar words were echoing out from all directions. Everyone in the Tao of Alchemy division clasped hands and bowed to Meng Hao, from apprentice alchemists on up. Greetings, Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. We offer greetings, Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. Fang Danian clasped hands and bowed deeply to Meng Hao. Naturally, he was aware that Meng Hao had resorted to a bit of trickery in the end. However, that was not important considering that the Tao Bell approved. The Tao Bell was a magical instrument left behind by the first-generation patriarch of the Fang clan, and was a signature treasure of the Fang clan. It had not interfered in the previous upheaval and rebellion, due to the extraordinary circumstances surrounding the internal strife. Were it not for that, the Tao Bell would have intervened long before the first-generation patriarch's clone ever did. As of this moment, the Tao Bell shone with boundless, majestic light, which was full of numerous mysterious magical symbols. The symbols glowed, forming a sea of light that swirled around the entire Fang clan. Because of the brilliant light, the calls of those in the Tao of Alchemy division became even more intense. They echoed out of the Tao of Alchemy division in all directions, until even those in the ancestral mansion could hear them. Countless voices joined together, and were transformed into a call that was the unified will of the Tao of Alchemy division. The Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. Only clan members who had concocted the heavenly one-thought pill could be bestowed with the title of Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. Throughout all the years, the only person who had ever been called the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy was the first-generation patriarch. That is, until this day, when another emerged, the second Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. As of this moment, the Fang clan was abuzz, and the tolling of the Tao Bell caused the clan members' blood to boil. Furthermore, it caused many of them, regardless of whether or not they were members of the Tao of Alchemy division, to answer the call of their blood and shout out at the top of their lungs. Congratulations to the Tao of Alchemy division on the arrival of the Alchemy Lord. Congratulations to the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. A huge clamor filled the entire Fang clan and echoed out to fill roughly half of planet East Victory. There were even members of the Fang clan and the Medicine Immortal sect who stood there trembling, their minds reeling. One by one, they clasped hands and bowed in the direction of the Tao of Alchemy division. In that moment, Meng Hao's glory had reached an unparalleled pinnacle. Even Fang Yangsu and Fang Xiaodao took deep breaths, stepped forward, and then shockingly appeared in midair above the Tao of Alchemy division. As for Fang Yangsu, he looked seriously toward Meng Hao, then clasped hands and bowed. Of course, he was not bowing to Meng Hao's person, but rather bowing to what Meng Hao's new status as the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy represented. Fang Xiaodao hesitated for a moment before finally lowering his gaze and bowing to Meng Hao. He had no other choice but to do so. Despite being a Tao realm patriarch, despite being the acting clan chief, the will of the Tao Bell had spoken, and as such, no member of the Fang clan could possibly resist. To resist the Tao Bell was to disobey the first-generation patriarch. Fang Yangsu and Fang Xiaodao, as well as the 3 remaining ancient realm cultivators who had extinguished more than 10 soul lamps, including the 7th patriarch, all appeared and bowed. As of this moment, the entire Fang clan was bowing to Meng Hao. The toll of the bell continued to echo out, 18 times, 19 times, all the way until it had tolled 27 times, shaking all of planet East Victory. Then the brilliant light shining out from the Tao bell descended onto Meng Hao, surrounding him and causing him to float up into the air toward the bell itself. This development caused everyone to stare in shock. Next, an ancient voice spoke out from the Tao bell, which echoed out into the minds of all members of the Fang clan. The Lord of the Tao of Alchemy can ring the Tao bell one time, converging the soul, extending divine sense, and allowing the will of the clan to descend onto the body. The voice echoed out into the minds of all of the members of the Fang clan, whose eyes went wide as they stared at Meng Hao within the light. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever, but his heart was pounding with joy. So it's true, the dying words of the first-generation patriarch weren't a hoax. I was able to find clues in the clan's ancient records, and they turned out to be true. The Tao bell is not limited to chiming autonomously, but it can be rung by others. And the only way to do that is to become the clan chief or the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy. Meng Hao floated through the light toward the Tao bell. Countless clan members were looking on, and Fang Xiaodao's heart was starting to pound. He had overlooked the matter of the Tao bell, as well as the fact that either the true clan chief or the Lord of the Tao of Alchemy could ring it. After all, for countless years in the Fang clan, no true clan chief had appeared other than the first-generation patriarch. If this scene hadn't revealed itself now, he would never even have considered that it could happen. The foreboding sensation continued to grow stronger within Fang Xiaodao. All of a sudden, he felt as if things were slipping out of his control. It seemed like something very bad was going to happen, and all of a sudden, he thought about the month that Meng Hao had spent studying the clan's ancient records. Just what is the little hoodlum up to, he thought, frowning. All clan members watched as Meng Hao floated up toward the Tao bell, getting nearer and nearer until he was directly in front of it. It was simply enormous. Because it usually appeared up in the air, with nothing nearby to compare it to, it normally didn't give people a sense of its stunning size. But now that Meng Hao was right there in front of it, he looked no larger than one of the magical symbols carved on the bell's surface. By now, the minds of all the members of the Fang clan were shaken. The bad feeling in Fang Xiaodao was getting much more intense. Meng Hao stood in front of the Tao bell, took a deep breath, and then looked down at the lands below. He looked at the ancestral mansion at the Tao of Alchemy Division and at Fang Xiaodao. Then he smirked, lifted his right hand, and waved to Fang Xiaodao, almost as if he were saying farewell. That instantly caused Fang Xiaodao's eyes to grow wide, and his mind to spin. Not good. Fang Xiaodao was just about to charge forward when Meng Hao's hand formed into a fist and he struck the Tao bell, causing it to ring. This time the Tao bell did not ring of its own initiative, but rather it was struck. As soon as Meng Hao's hand made contact with it, a boom echoed out that was completely different than the previous sound of its tolling. It was sonorous, ancient, filled with endless time. It sounded almost like a sigh, which instantly echoed out in all directions. All of the members of the Fang clan, regardless of the level of their cultivation base, as long as the blood of the Fang clan pumped in their veins, heard a reverberation that caused their minds to go blank. It didn't matter that Fang Xiaodao had a Tao realm cultivation base. In that moment, his expression turned vacant as the boundless sound of the tolling Tao bell filled his mind. Simultaneously, brilliant light suddenly surrounded the bodies of all members of the Fang clan. Meng Hao's mind was also trembling, and it felt as if all of his divine sense was being sucked into the Tao bell. Then, as the bell rang, it was dispersed outward in all directions. It wasn't just the members of the Fang clan who were affected. All the lands, the entire world, all of planet East Victory was affected. Mortals, plants, animals, all living things heard the toll of the bell, and suddenly their minds went blank. Meng Hao's divine sense flowed out with the tolling of the bell. In the blink of an eye, it filled all of planet East Victory. All of the lands in the whole world suddenly appeared in Meng Hao's mind, as clear as crystal. He saw every area of planet East Victory, every living thing. Considering the level of his cultivation base, it wasn't something he could normally do. However, with the divine soul nourishment of the power of the Tao bell and its tolling, his divine sense was now able to spread out virtually without limit. As of this moment, he was the only clear-headed person on the entire planet. All other life forms went blank, even Fang Xiaodao, who was now incapable of tracking or holding Meng Hao in place. Furthermore, if Meng Hao could come up with some way of teleporting far enough away, then Fang Xiaodao would be incapable of finding any traces of him. The bell tolled, echoing out in all directions, wiping out any and all traces of what would happen next. To Meng Hao, the tolling of the Tao bell was also extremely beneficial. This good fortune caused his divine sense to expand quite a bit and stabilize to an unheard of degree. He saw the medicine immortal sect as well as numerous mortal cities. He saw mountains, oceans, and rivers. He saw all of the cultivators on the planet as well as all of the plants and vegetation. However, in the same moment that his divine sense spread out across all of planet East Victory, as everyone else was dazed into immobility, Meng Hao suddenly gaped in shock. What he just saw was a stretch of ocean some distance away from the Fang clan on planet East Victory, where there was an island floating in the water. That island happened to look just like a turtle. In the moment that his divine sense looked upon it, the island suddenly trembled, and an enormous head appeared. Damn it, Meng Hao, you bastard. Why you? I came here to find my sweetie, not to wait for you, you little bastard. Yet you actually rang that piece of junk bell to try to catch me. The turtle started to curse, and despite everyone else being stupefied and unable to move, it flew up in exasperation out of the sea towards the sky, dragging the continent on its back as it went. The land on its back was none other than the state of Zhao. It carried with it Mount Daqing, memories of which sprang to mind anew. Guiding Trirane was also in the state of Zhao, looking toward Meng Hao and covering her mouth as she laughed. Old Turtle Reliance. Meng Hao stared in shock. He had never imagined that he would once again encounter Patriarch Reliance on planet East Victory. Chapter 10:16, Old Turtle Reliance. Chapter 10:17, pursued all the way out of planet East Victory. What are you up to? Hey, what the hell do you want? Wailed Patriarch Reliance. I hid all the way out here and you actually found me. Why you? Patriarch Reliance felt more aggrieved than he ever had in his entire life. However, he was very quick and instantly shot up into the sky. In the blink of an eye, he was off the planet and out into the starry sky, fleeing madly. The person he was least willing to lay eyes on in his entire life was none other than Meng Hao. He thought about how he had hidden in the Milky Way sea back in the lands of South Heaven. Eventually, he had gritted his teeth and fled planet South Heaven to hide on planet East Victory, nearly halfway across the starry sky of the Ninth Mountain. But then, Meng Hao had actually found him. Patriarch Reliance's heart continued to fill with grief. The world is so big, how could you possibly have tracked me down? He roared, transforming into a beam of light. The League of Demon Sealers are all bastards. Damn demon sealers. I should have lived footloose and fancy-free, but now I'm not even free to hook up with the ladies. The Patriarch is brave and fierce, the #1 immortal turtle in the Ninth Mountain. Fudge, there's no way I'll let some little bastard make me his mount. Damn it, impossible. Meng Hao, you little bastard, one of these days I'm going to hide somewhere that you'll never find me, roared Patriarch Reliance, trembling so badly that it shook the state of Zhao. Inwardly, he couldn't possibly be more depressed. Naturally, he was aware of Meng Hao becoming immortal, and had even watched the shocking scene of him opening all his immortal meridians, which had left him numb with fright. However, he had also felt a little bit lucky. After all, planet East Victory was big, so he had assumed Meng Hao would never be able to find him, or that Meng Hao would even think to look for him there. This caused him to feel a bit smug, believing himself to have a profound understanding of what it meant to be hidden as well as a shadow beneath bright lamplight. He had been extremely pleased with himself, and had even frequently bragged to Guiding Trirane about the whole thing. Never in his wildest dreams could he have imagined that Meng Hao would use the technique of ringing that bell to multiply his divine sense dramatically, sweep it across all of planet East Victory, and then find him. As soon as Meng Hao's divine sense locked onto him, he began to moan. Meng Hao's eyes began to shine brightly as he stared at Patriarch Reliance. Underneath the influence of the Tao Bell, all other living creatures were so shocked that they were temporarily knocked senseless. As for why Old Turtle Reliance was able to flee and wasn't affected at all, he wasn't sure. However, there the old turtle was, with the state of Zhao on his back like usual. Meng Hao's eyes gleamed with mad joy. "Stay right where you are, old turtle," he roared immediately. The instant Patriarch Reliance heard those words, he trembled and then picked up speed. Meng Hao used his next words to frighten and upset Patriarch Reliance. "Old Turtle Reliance, if you let me catch you this time, then you can forget about ever getting away. I've already figured out a way to use the demon sealing hexes to lock you down." In order to make the threats more realistic, Meng Hao remained calm and pretended as if he didn't care at all whether Patriarch Reliance fled. At the same time, he lifted his left hand, and ripples of a demon sealing hex appeared, along with a tiny rift in the palm of his hand. "You can't escape," he said, his expression calm and seemingly filled with utter confidence. From the look of things, all he had to do was wave a finger, and the restrictive hexing seal within Patriarch Reliance would be activated. His confidence and tranquility caused Patriarch Reliance's eyes to go wide, and his mind to spin. He was bewildered, unable to determine whether or not Meng Hao was putting on an act. However, the intense feeling of the demon sealing hex was like nothing he had ever sensed before, and it caused him to become extremely nervous and alarmed. Impossible, how could this be happening? Thought Patriarch Reliance, trembling. Then he recalled the terrifying scene of Meng Hao opening his immortal meridians to enter the immortal realm, and suddenly he realized that it most certainly wasn't impossible. And yet, "I won't give in," he howled inwardly. "No way, I'll risk everything. I'm going to get out of here." In the blink of an eye, he was outside of the planet and in the starry sky. Fearful of being pursued by Meng Hao, he gritted his teeth and began to cast a curse. Rumbling could then be heard as, up ahead of him, glittering light could be seen out in the starry sky. Innumerable motes of light swirled around as they transformed into a gigantic teleportation portal. In order to form the teleportation portal, Patriarch Reliance even spat out so much blood that it formed a waterfall that surged toward the teleportation portal and stained it bright red. "You little bastard, see you again." "Never," he roared. Then his body flickered as he shot toward the teleportation portal. Meng Hao's eyes flickered at the sight of the blood-colored portal, and he was inwardly delighted. By now the power of the Dao Bell was weakening, and the dazed cultivators would be coming to their senses at any moment. At this point, Meng Hao smiled. "Patriarch Reliance really is my lucky star," he thought, taking a deep breath. Just when Patriarch Reliance was about to enter the blood-colored teleportation portal, the starstone in Meng Hao's left eye began to glitter with starlight. One thought stellar transformation was the first-generation Patriarch's most powerful Taoist magic. In addition to allowing one to incarnate as a planet, it also contained a type of teleportation magic. That magic was known as stellar teleportation. Before reaching immortal ascension, Meng Hao hadn't been able to use it. Now that he was the immortal realm paragon, he could just barely manage to force its usage. His plan all along had been to wait until Fang Xiaodao was in a daze due to the Dao Bell. Then, he would be incapable of keeping Meng Hao locked down, an opportunity Meng Hao could take advantage of to teleport away, and which would also cause Fang Xiaodao to be unable to pick up his trail. Unfortunately, Fang Xiaodao was a Dao realm expert. Meng Hao was confident that his plan could get him off of planet East Victory, but he wasn't so confident in being able to elude Fang Xiaodao long-term. The rest of the plan had been to flee at top speed once he got out, then head toward the Nine Seas God world in the Ninth Sea to report in as a disciple. Although his plan had some weak areas, he had no other choice than to give it a shot. However, after he saw Patriarch Reliance, he went wild with joy. He could sense how incredible Patriarch Reliance was. Considering the old turtle could still move under the influence of the Dao Bell, he obviously wasn't weak and clearly had numerous ways of escaping. Therefore, Meng Hao had used words to provoke him, to threaten him, to frighten him. The pure and charming Patriarch Reliance ended up being so terrified that he didn't hesitate to spit out massive amounts of blood to open a blood-fueled teleportation portal. At a glance, Meng Hao could tell that the teleportation portal was powerful and would definitely lead to a distant location, much further than his own stellar teleportation could reach. Almost in the same moment that Patriarch Reliance began to enter the blood-colored teleportation portal, glittering light covered him and began to teleport him away. It was at that point that starlight covered Meng Hao. Then a boom could be heard as he directly exploded. Unexpectedly, his body transformed into motes of starlight, which then shot away from the Dao Bell at incredible speed. When they reappeared, they were in the starry sky, right next to Patriarch Reliance's blood-colored teleportation portal. The motes rapidly reformed into Meng Hao, whose face was pale and cultivation base trembling. In the moment he appeared, the teleportation portal suddenly bloomed like a huge blood-colored flower, then vanished. Meanwhile, the effects of the Dao Bell were wearing off of everyone. Fang Xiaodao was the first to regain his senses, and in the instant he did, he noticed that Meng Hao was not by the Dao Bell, causing his face to fall. "Not good," he said, flickered forward to reappear in the starry sky. He sent divine sense shooting out in all directions, rapidly covering all of planet East Victory as he searched for Meng Hao. Then, he caused his divine sense to expand out into the starry sky, and his face grew very grave as he caught sight of the location where the blood-colored teleportation portal had just vanished. "Little hoodlum," he said, grinding his teeth. He looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He chuckled bitterly, and then suddenly realized why Meng Hao had been poring through the ancient records. A flash of light appeared next to Fang Xiaodao, which turned into Fang Yangsu. He also looked at the location where the blood-colored teleportation portal had been. After a moment of silent consideration, he couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. He actually came up with this whole plan just to escape the marriage. He smiled. "Nice job, Meng Hao." "That little hoodlum searched through the ancient records for a whole month," said Fang Xiaodao, sounding a bit helpless. "Now that I think about it, he must have found enough tiny clues to piece together some information about the Dao Bell." Fang Yangsu sighed in admiration. To be able to not only find so many clues in the ancient records, but also be able to piece them together and use them to come up with a plan like this shows that Meng Hao is really extremely exceptional. "You're even praising him," Fang Xiaodao said. "That little hoodlum didn't concoct any medicinal pill. It was all a feint. His only goal was to become the lord of the Tao of Alchemy Division so that he could ring the Tao Bell. As soon as we were knocked senseless, there was no way to restrict his movement, and he had a moment of freedom. Although I'm not sure how he managed to teleport away. From the remnants of starlight here it's obvious that one thought stellar transformation must have some teleportation Taoist magic that we're unaware of. It might be somewhat of a headache for us that he escaped, but the most important thing is the agreement with the Li clan. There's still one more month left, before the little hoodlum and that Li lass are supposed to get married." Fang Xiaodao smiled bitterly. "Enough, elder brother Xiaodao. Who else in the junior generation of the Ninth Mountain and Sea has the skill to escape from right under our noses like he did? Since he's gone, why not just let the matter be?" Fang Yangsu laughed heartily as he accompanied the flummoxed Fang Xiaodao back toward Planet East Victory. Planet East Victory returned to normal. Few people were aware of what had actually happened with Meng Hao, and those who did not spread word. According to public knowledge, after becoming Lord of the Tao of Alchemy Division, Meng Hao had gone into secluded meditation in order to concoct medicinal pills. However, there were a few people who had guessed that Meng Hao had long since fled. One of those people was Fang Wei, who currently sat cross-legged in the Medicine Immortal sect, looking up thoughtfully toward the sky above the ancestral mansion. "You're probably gone by now, right?" he thought. Fang Wei had complicated feelings regarding Meng Hao. However, he would never forget his mission. He was the shield of the Fang clan, and his job was to protect the clan from within the shadows. After a long moment, Fang Wei closed his eyes. He had cut away his past. After dying and then being resurrected, he had told himself that he was no longer a chosen of the Fang clan. Back in the ancestral mansion, the Grand Elder was held responsible for the rebellion and for his poor handling of many other previous matters. His punishment was to spend 100 years in secluded meditation. He was not allowed to emerge and had to remain sitting cross-legged in the stony cavern. He had no idea that Meng Hao had already fled, and yet Meng Hao's image continued to remain imprinted on his heart. Occasionally, he would think about him and would sigh. The terracotta soldier continued to stand silently in the ancestral land. In the moment that Meng Hao left, it suddenly lifted its head and stared off into the sky, waiting for something. It was waiting for Meng Hao to fulfill his promise to one day take it away from this place. Meng Hao was gone, but ever since he had come to Planet East Victory, he had spawned many legends and founded many myths. When he arrived, nobody took much note, but when he left, he was the Fang clan's crown prince.